It starts with a single choice: 3 Pokeballs, a sleepy town, and a dream too big to stay local. That place? It's Kanto. But this isn't just the beginning of a journey. It's the blueprint of everything that followed, the foundation, the pulse behind every badge earned, every legend uncovered, every step you've taken across regions. Welcome to how Kanto shaped the entire Pokémon world, a deep dive into the region that didn't just launch a franchise, it built the very framework of the universe we still explore today. If you've ever fired up Pokémon Red or Blue, or felt that familiar nostalgia flicker in Scarlet and Violet, then you already know. Kanto isn't just where it started. It's home. Pallet Town's stillness, the rustle of Viridian Forest, the electric breath of Saffron City. It's burned into memory. But look closer and you'll see something more. Kanto wasn't just a charming first map. It was a testing ground, a lab where core ideas were born, battle-tested, and sent rippling through the fabric of every future generation. Today, we're peeling back the layers of that legacy. Mechanics, myth, technology, and culture, all shaped by one region's bold beginnings. Quick thank you to everyone who's been supporting these videos. You're seriously amazing. Most of our regular viewers are already subscribed, but if you haven't yet, take a moment to double check you're subscribed and that your bell is set to all. YouTube's been acting up lately, so this helps make sure you actually see new uploads, and it really helps our little community grow. Also, don't forget to share this video with any friends you have who also love Pokemon. Thanks again! Now back to the video. Strap in, trainers. This isn't just a story, it's the root system of the entire Pokemon world, and once you've seen it, you'll never hold a Pokeball the same way again. Let's start at the beginning, because Kanto's story is the origin of origins. Picture the late 90s, Game Freak drops the first Pokemon games, and bam! Kanto emerges as the template for everything. It wasn't accidental. This region introduced the core mechanics that every subsequent adventure would build upon, replicate, or rebel against. Think about the Pokédex, that trusty device buzzing with data on 151 species. It debuted here, cataloguing the original set of Pokémon that became the gold standard for biodiversity worldwide. Other regions didn't just copy it, they expanded it, but always with Kanto's framework in mind. Sinnoh's Pokédex, Hoenn's. They're all evolutions of that first scrappy entry in Pallet Town. And the gym system? Oh man, that's Kanto's crown jewel! 8 badges, each tied to a type specialist, leading to the ultimate showdown at the Indigo Plateau. Brock's rocky resolve in Pewter City, Misty's watery fury in Cerulean. These weren't just bosses, they were the blueprint for challenge and growth. Fast forward to Unova or Galar, and you'll find echoes everywhere. Gym leaders with their signature arenas, their personal stakes, their role in forging trainers into champions. Kanto didn't invent battling. Pokemon have been clashing since time immemorial, but it codified it into a structured path, a rite of passage that's now universal. Without Kanto's league format, there'd be no Pokemon League as we know it. It's the global tournament standard, the event that draws crowds from every corner of the world, all tracing back to that first Indigo conference. But Kanto's influence runs deeper than mechanics. It's woven into the tech and science that powers the Pokemon world. Let's talk Pokeballs, those little red and white spheres. Their mass production kicked off in Kanto's factories, turning what was once a rare artisan craft into an accessible tool for trainers everywhere. Before Kanto, capturing Pokemon was hit or miss, often relying on handmade nets or ancient rituals. But here, industrial innovation made it standard issue. Now every region from Alola to Paldea churns out their own variants, Quick Balls, Dusk Balls, but they're all descendants of Kanto's original design. It's like how the iPhone reshaped smartphones. Kanto's Pokeball set the baseline for human-Pokemon partnership. Speaking of partnerships, enter Bill and the PC storage system. This guy's a genius, right? Holed up in his seaside lab, he invents a digital network that lets you box up your Pokemon and access them from any center worldwide. What started as a Kanto-exclusive hack, beaming your team to Oak's lab, ballooned into the global data grid we rely on today. Imagine Lumio City and Kalos without it. Trainers would be lugging around unstable teams, risking bonds and battles. Kanto exported these norms of integration, teaching the world how humans and Pokemon could coexist through tech, not just brute force. It's the foundation of Poké Centers, daycares, even the ethical guidelines for training that prevent abuse across borders. Now zoom in on the corporate side, because Kanto wasn't just innovative, it was industrial. Silph Co in Saffron City. That's the Silicon Valley of the Pokémon world. Their inventions didn't stay local, they flooded the market, setting the technological bar for every region that followed. Take the Silph Scope, a gadget that pierces ghostly disguises, revealing the truth behind hauntings. That tech. It spread to places like Lavandia Town's Pokémon Tower and beyond, influencing ghost-type research in Galar's Wild Area or Hisui's Spirit Studies. Then there are TMs, technical machines, that teach moves instantly. Kanto's version standardized skill sharing, and now every Pokemart from Motostoke to Mesagoza stocks them, teleport tech from Silph. It paved the way for instant travel hubs in later regions, shrinking the world and making multi-region journeys feasible. Silph's shadow looms large, but so does the darker side, the criminal underbelly. Team Rocket. Those black-clad goons with their R logo? They weren't just comic relief, they were the prototype for every villainous syndicate that came after. Giovanni's empire, built on smuggling, experimentation, and hierarchical control, became the playbook. Ideology. They preached Pokémon as tools for power, a philosophy echoed in Team Plasma's liberation rhetoric or Team Skull's street-level chaos. Operations. Rocket's heists on Silph Co, their radio tower takeovers, these set the stage for Aqua and Magma's ecological schemes or Galactic's universe-warping plots. Kanto established the paradigm. Villains aren't random thugs. They're organised, ideological forces that trainers must dismantle. Without Rocket, the Pokémon world might lack that thrilling cat-and-mouse tension that keeps us hooked. And let's not shy away from the ethical minefield, the Mewtwo project. Hidden in the depths of Cinnabar Mansion, this cloning saga didn't just create a legendary powerhouse, it ignited a global debate on genetic engineering. Mewtwo's birth, born from Ambertoo's twisted ambitions, crossed lines that echoed through time. Cloning, legendary experimentation. Kanto drew the boundaries, forcing the world to confront what it means to play God with Pokémon. Look at Ori's Cypher or Kalos's AZ, those stories of artificial Pokémon and immortal regrets. They're all ripples from Mewtwo's rage-filled escape. It defined the discourse, rarity tiers for legendaries, study methods that prioritize ethics over exploitation. Kanto taught us that power without restraint leads to catastrophe, a lesson every region grapples with. Culturally, Kanto is the canon that never fades. Red, blue, and green, those silent protagonists who toppled Rocket and claimed the League, they're mythic now, referenced in murals in Sinnoh's ruins, whispered about in Johto's tales. Red's mountaintop vigil on Mount Silver, it's the archetype for legendary trainers like Cynthia or Leon. And the Pokémon themselves, the original 151, they're treated as the foundational set, influencing migrations, media, and biodiversity everywhere. Pikachu's face on every billboard, that's Kanto's export. Charizard's fiery iconography in battles across Paldea, original Kanto flair. Even in universe, Kanto's starters migrate, shaping ecosystems in Hoenn's oceans or Unova's plains. It's the cultural glue holding the Pokémon world together. Then, there are the legendaries, the birds, Mew, and that shadow of Mewtwo, Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres. Guardians of sea, sky, and earth, they established the class system for mythics. Rarity tiers. Kanto pegged them as elusive, world-shaping forces, studied through observation, not capture. Mew's playful elusiveness? It set the tone for Celebi or Jirachi, hidden wonders that tease our curiosity. This framework guided how Johto catalogued its beasts, how Alola classified its guardians. Kanto didn't just introduce legendaries, it taught the world how to revere them, turning raw power into structured lore. Finally, Kanto's reach extends to connectivity. Its tight bond with Johto, sharing the Indigo League, economic ties through Goldenrod and Saffron, became the model for inter-region harmony. Trade routes, cultural exchanges, even shared threats like the Red Gyarados saga. They blueprint how Kanto links to Sevi Islands, or how Paldea interacts with Kitakami. It's the template for a connected globe, where no region stands alone. So why does this matter? Because understanding Kanto's shadow unlocks the Pokémon world. It's not just nostalgia, it's the stakes of a universe built on one region's innovations, conflicts and dreams. We've got hours ahead to dissect it all, from the tech revolutions to the villainous legacies, the cultural myths to the legendary blueprints. If you're a longtime fan or new to the lore, stick around. This journey will change how you play, watch, and dream about Pokémon. Hit that like button if you're ready to explore, subscribe for more deep dives, and let's catch 'em all, starting with the roots. Welcome to the shape of it all. Hold on, trainers. Before we dive deeper, let's really sink into why Kanto's template feels so timeless. That first Pokédex wasn't just a list, it was a declaration of discovery, a tool that turned wild encounters into encyclopedic quests. Every region pays homage, Alola's Rotom Dex adds flair, but it's Kanto's data-driven spirit at the core. The gym structure, it instilled progression, making victories feel earned. Without Brock's Onyx slamming you back to basics, would Lutz Surge's Raichu hit as hard? It's that escalation, that journey from novice to elite, replicated in every league format worldwide. The Indigo Plateau's grandeur, it's the aspiration, the global stage where champions like Alder or Geeta trace their paths. On the tech front, Pokeball mass production democratized training. Pre-Kanto, only elites could bond reliably. Now anyone in Coumarine City can toss one. Bill's PC? A revolution in logistics, globalizing what was local. Silph's Sprawl, from repels to the Master Ball, exported efficiency, letting regions like Unova focus on spectacle over basics. TMs turned static movesets dynamic, a Kanto gift that evolves in every TR or TM case later. Rocket's model, ruthless efficiency, grunts, admins, boss. It inspired Flair's fashion-forward fanaticism, Aqua's submarine ops, Mewtwo. The ethical Scar, cloning bans in international law stem from it, influencing Devoncorp's duds or Ether's preserves. Culturally, Red's legacy? He's the silent hero archetype, mirrored in Ethan's radio calls or Gloria's streams. Original Pokémon? Their migrations seeded diversity, like Bulbasaur groves in Johto or Pidgeiflox in Galar. Legendaries framed reverence, birds as elemental forces, Mew as genesis. It guided studies, from Sinnoh's creation myths to Paldea's paradox, Kanto Johto's linkage, economic hubs, shared wilds, the model for Kitakami-Paldea bonds, or Aura's fringes. This foundation raises the stakes. Kanto's choices echo in every crisis, every triumph. It's the world we inhabit, shaped by one region's bold strokes. Ready to unpack it? Let's go. The dawn of a world. In the heart of what we now call the Pokémon world, Kanto wasn't just a region, it was the very first heartbeat of an entire civilization. Long before the bustling cities of Johto or the vast wilds of Sinnoh, Kanto stood as the undisputed cradle of Pokémon society, where humans and Pokémon first learned to coexist in ways that would ripple out to every corner of the globe. You see, it all began with a simple truth. Without Kanto, there might not be a Pokémon world as we know it. This was the place where the bonds between trainers and their companions weren't just formed, they were forged into the foundation of everything that followed. Picture the scene, though you're hearing it, so let your mind paint it vividly. Rolling hills dotted with ancient forests, coastal towns where the sea breeze carried the cries of wild Wingull, and hidden caves echoing with the roars of determined rock types. Kanto's landscape wasn't accidental. It was a natural laboratory, teeming with diverse ecosystems that invited exploration. But what truly set it apart was the people, the early settlers who arrived not as conquerors, but as curious wanderers. These weren't the elite scientists of later eras. They were farmers, fishermen, and adventurers who stumbled upon Pokémon in their daily lives. A child in Pallet Town might befriend a curious Bulbasaur while tending to the family garden, or a sailor in Vermilion City could share his catch with a playful Squirtle. These encounters weren't rare anomalies, they were the norm, sparking a cultural shift that turned Pokémon from mysterious wild creatures into integral parts of human society. As these bonds deepened, so did the need to understand them. Enter the Pokédex, Kanto's greatest gift to the world, and yes, the very first one. Invented by a brilliant mind named Oak, this wasn't some bulky gadget. It was a portable encyclopedia, a device that could scan, record, and analyze Pokémon on the spot. Imagine holding something in your hand that doesn't just capture a photo, but captures the essence of a living being, the height, weight, cries, even behavioral patterns. For the first time, Knowledge about Pokémon wasn't passed down through myths and folklore. It was documented, democratized, and shared. Oak's creation revolutionized how we catalogued life itself. Before the Pokédex, encounters with a Pikachu might end in a tall tale around the campfire. After, every detail was logged, creating a shared database that trainers everywhere could access. It was like giving the world its first universal language for biodiversity, turning scattered observations into a systematic science. But the Pokédex didn't invent itself in a vacuum. It was born from necessity, driven by Kanto's early explorers who fanned out across the region with notebooks, nets, and unyielding curiosity. These weren't professional researchers at first. Many were everyday folk turned pioneers, mapping uncharted territories and chronicling the Pokémon they met. Take Professor Oak's own apprentices, for instance, young enthusiasts who trekked through Viridian Forest, dodging webs from Spinarac ancestors to sketch the first entries on Caterpie. Or consider the coastal expeditions off Cinnabar Island, where divers braved underwater currents to document the graceful evolutions of Magikarp into the mighty Gyarados. Over time, these efforts culminated in something monumental: the documentation of over 150 distinct species. That's right, 150 Pokémon, each with their habitats, diets, and interactions meticulously recorded. From the fiery Charmander flickering in the shadows of Matmoon, to the psychic Abra teleporting away from prying eyes in Saffron's outskirts, every entry built a tapestry of life that Kanto alone could provide. What made this cataloguing so groundbreaking wasn't just the numbers, it was the blueprint it set for biodiversity classification worldwide. Kanto's system, categorizing by type, evolution chains, and regional adaptations, became the gold standard. When explorers later ventured to Hoenn's volcanic islands, they didn't start from scratch. They adapted Kanto's framework, slotting in new species like Numel while referencing the original entries on Geodude for comparison. Even in distant Unova, where urban sprawl meets wild plains, the Pokédex's influence ensured that T-Pig's fire traits were measured against Charmander's, creating continuity across oceans. You can almost hear the excitement in those early journals, can't you? This Bulbasaur variant shows resilience in temperate zones, one explorer might note, unknowingly laying the groundwork for global conservation efforts. Without Kanto's initial push, the world might still be fumbling in the dark, with Pokémon knowledge fragmented and forgotten. Yet, as these surveys unfolded, something unexpected emerged, a shocking revelation that would redefine how we view Pokémon migrations. Kanto's early explorations, you see, weren't passive observations. The act of documenting and interacting with these creatures inadvertently influenced their movements on a global scale. Think about it. As explorers mapped routes through dense forests and along trade paths, they created trails that Pokémon followed. A flock of Pidgey, drawn to the seeds scattered by human camps, might migrate farther east than ever before, carrying Kanto's biodiversity seeds to Johto's borders. Or consider the underwater surveys around Cerulean Cape. Divers noting Staryu populations inadvertently stirred currents that guided schools of Pokémon toward distant shores, like the Krabby that ended up in Kalas's coastal waters. It was chaos wrapped in discovery. One particularly infamous expedition in the 19th century, led by a cartographer named Harlan, charted the Fuchsia Safari Zone. His team's careful notations on exotic imports like Rhyhorn didn't just fill Pokédex pages, they sparked a chain reaction. Pokémon, sensing safer paths through human-escorted territories, began shifting their seasonal journeys. What started as local patterns, Venonat swarms moving to avoid over-documented habitats, snowballed into global shifts. Suddenly, species once confined to Kanto's mild climate appeared in Sinnoh's tundras, adapting and evolving in ways no one predicted. This unintended influence was profound. Kanto's surveys, meant to classify, ended up as catalysts for change. Historians now point to the Harlan effect, where documented hotspots became migration hubs, drawing rare Pokémon like the elusive Mew from hidden groves into more observable ranges. You won't believe how this played out in real time. Take the case of the legendary birds, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres. Early Kanto spotters, using prototype Pokédex tech, logged their sightings around the Seafoam Islands and power plant. Those records didn't just educate, they guided conservationists to protect those areas, inadvertently funneling migratory patterns that linked Kanto's skies to the whirlwinds of other regions. Pokémon that once roamed in isolation now crisscrossed continents, blending gene pools and sparking hybrid behaviours. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The very tool designed to observe quietly reshaped the world it observed. Delving deeper, let's talk about the human side of this dawn. The explorers weren't infallible heroes, they faced real perils that tested the bonds they were building. Remember the Viridian City outbreaks in the early days? Wild Rattata packs, driven by habitat disruptions from unchecked logging, overran settlements. It was the Pokédex entries on their burrowing habits that allowed locals to devise deterrents, turning potential disaster into a lesson in coexistence. Or consider the Lavender Town mists, where ghastly hauntings baffled the first recorders. By cataloguing their gaseous forms and nocturnal peaks, explorers not only survived but established norms for spectral Pokémon interactions that Johto's own ghost hunters would later rely on. These stories weren't just entries in a book, they were survival tales that humanized the science, making every Pokédex scan feel like a personal victory, and the species themselves? Over those 150 documented, each brought a unique flavour to Kanto's emerging society. Bulbasaur's vine whips became tools for farmers tilling hard soil, while Pidgeotto scouts aided messengers across the region. The Pokédex didn't just list them, it revealed their potential, transforming Kanto from a wild frontier into a harmonious hub. Early adopters, like the gym leaders who formed spontaneously in Pewter and Cerulean, used these records to train and challenge, embedding classification into competitive culture from the start. You can feel the momentum building, right? Each discovery fed into the next, creating a feedback loop that propelled Kanto forward. But let's not overlook the quieter revolutions. The Pokédex's data network, rudimentary at first, connected isolated towns via shared ledgers, foreshadowing the global PC systems to come. Explorers traded entries like treasures. A detailed Oddish profile from Route 24 swapped for a Bellsprout analysis from Teledon, fostering a collaborative spirit that erased borders early on. This wasn't empire building, it was world building, where knowledge flowed as freely as a river Pokémon stream. As we uncover these layers, it's clear Kanto's dawn wasn't a singular event but a cascade of innovations. The shocking migration shifts, for instance, had ripple effects on ecology that scientists are still unravelling. In one documented case, Kanto's surveys of EV populations in Celadon led to over 150 sightings that encouraged breeding programs. Those evolutions? They didn't stay local. Drawn by the stabilised habitats, Vaporeon variants migrated northward, influencing Alola's aquatic lines in ways that boosted resilience against tidal changes. It's a reminder of how interconnected everything is, one region's curiosity altering the planet's pulse. You might wonder, how did these early efforts hold up against skepticism? Not everyone embraced the Pokédex at first. Traditionalists in Saffron argued it objectified Pokémon, reducing living spirits to data points. But the explorers' persistence paid off. By demonstrating practical wins, like using Pokédex scans to predict Mankey rampages and avert village raids, they won over doubters. These anecdotes, passed down through oral histories, add emotional weight to the facts. They make you root for those trailblazers, don't they? Facing storms in the Seafoam Caves or negotiating with territorial Primeape, all while scribbling notes that would shape futures. Expanding on the biodiversity blueprint, Kanto's model emphasised holistic views, not just stats, but stories. A Jigglypuff entry might note its lullaby's hypnotic effects, warning trainers while inspiring bards in later regions. This narrative approach ensured the classification wasn't dry taxonomy. It was alive, adaptable. When Unova's professors built their own systems, they mirrored Kanto's by including cultural notes, ensuring Pokémon weren't seen as mere fighters, but as companions with histories. The migration revelation adds a layer of intrigue that's hard to shake. Consider the global impact. Kanto's documented flyways for Fearow flocks inadvertently created aerial corridors that Butterfree from other areas followed, leading to pollen exchanges that enriched distant floras. It's a butterfly effect, literally in Pokémon terms. One explorer's map from Route 8, detailing Tauros herds, shifted grazing patterns that echoed to Gala's plains, where similar bovines thrived on the precedent. Through it all, Kanto's dawn teaches us about unintended consequences and bold visions. The Pokédex, that revolutionary tool, didn't just catalogue, it connected, influenced, and evolved the world. As we stand on this foundation, you can't help but feel the pull toward what came next, the challenges that turned these early bonds into something unbreakable. And that's where our journey intensifies in the next chapter, Forging the Path to Mastery, where we'll explore how Kanto's first trainers rose from novices to legends, crafting the gym and league systems that every aspiring champion still chases today. You won't want to miss how these origins tested the limits of human and Pokémon potential. Forging the Path to Mastery. In the heart of Pallet Town, where every young dreamer sets out with a Pokeball in hand, the true test of a trainer's resolve begins not with wild encounters, but with the unyielding challenge of Kanto's gym system. This wasn't just a series of battles. It was the birth of a structured path that turned raw ambition into legendary skill, and its influence stretches far beyond those 8 hallowed arenas. Picture yourself as that wide-eyed starter, stepping into Pewter City for the first time. The air hums with the grind of stone and the low rumble of Geodude shifting in the shadows. Brock, the rock-type gym leader, doesn't just hand out badges like candy. He demands you prove your bond with your Pokémon, forging discipline from the chaos of the wild. That boulder badge? It's more than a shiny pin. It's the first marker on a map of mastery, symbolizing not just victory, but the grit to push through failure. You see, Kanto's gyms revolutionized how trainers grow. Before them, battles were scattered skirmishes, hit or miss clashes in the grass or on forgotten trails. But here, in this pioneering region, they created a ladder of progression. Each badge a step up, a testament to your evolving strategy and unbreakable will. Collect them all, and you're not just a kid with a Charmander anymore, you're a force ready to claim the elite. What makes this system so revolutionary? Let's break it down. The badges aren't arbitrary trophies, they're encoded with a subtle power that resonates with your Pokemon's own abilities. Earn the Cascade badge from Misty in Cerulean City, and suddenly your water types feel that extra surge in battle, a quiet boost that encourages specialization. But it's the discipline they instill that's the real game changer. You can't brute force your way through. Brock teaches you patience, waiting for the perfect moment to strike against his Onix's unyielding defense. Misty? She hammers home adaptability, her Starmie whipping up waves that force you to think 3 moves ahead or drown in defeat. These aren't just fights, they're lessons etched into your soul, shaping how you train, how you bond, and how you evolve as a trainer. And here's where Kanto's genius shines. This blueprint didn't stay local. When Johto rose next door, its gyms mirrored the structure, badges gleaming with the same symbolic weight. Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, they all adopted it, tweaking types and themes but keeping that core progression. Why? Because Kanto proved it works. It turns novices into champions, one hard-won badge at a time. Now dive deeper into those gym leaders, the unsung architects of this path. Brock wasn't always the stoic rock enthusiast you remember. Legend has it he started as a miner in the mountains, taming wild rock types to protect his siblings from cave-ins. His methods? Pure innovation. He pioneered weighted training regimens, having his Pokémon haul boulders uphill to build endurance that no other region had seen. Imagine the ripple effect. Years later, in Kalos, gym leaders like Grant used similar endurance drills for their rock squads, crediting Kanto's foundational grit. Then there's Misty, the fiery sister of Cerulean fame. She didn't just lead with water types, she created aquatic obstacle courses that tested not just power, but precision. Her Gyarados wasn't a brute, it was a symphony of controlled fury, trained through synchronized swims that honed teamwork. You can hear the echoes in Alola's swimming trials, or Gala's dynamic water battles. These pioneers didn't isolate their techniques, they shared them, travelling to advise new regions, ensuring Kanto's specialised training became the global standard. Electric types zapping through obstacle grids in Vermilion? That's Latent Surge building on Brock's endurance model, but with a shocking twist. Erika's Verdant Viridian Gym, where grass types weave illusions. It draws from Misty's adaptability, turning environments into allies. But you know what really sets Kanto's gyms apart? The human element. The leaders themselves as mentors. They weren't distant overlords. They were flawed, passionate guides. Brock's quiet wisdom helped countless trainers overcome self-doubt, whispering advice mid-battle about trusting your Pokemon's instincts. Misty's tough love pushed you to confront weaknesses head-on, her post-loss talks lingering like a cool mist, urging you to refine your style. These interactions built a culture of mentorship that spread worldwide. In every region since, gym leaders host clinics, share strategies, fostering that same discipline. It's why a kid in Lumiose City today might reference Brock's unbreakable foundation philosophy when prepping for their first badge. Kanto didn't just invent the system, it humanized it, making mastery feel achievable, personal. Of course, no path to greatness is without its shadows. Beneath the gleaming badges and triumphant fanfares, hidden rivalries simmered among Kanto's elite. Brock and Misty. Their public camaraderie masked a fierce competition over who could claim the most promising protégés. Whispers in trainer circles spoke of late-night spars where Brock's rocks clashed against Misty's waves, each vying to prove their type's superiority. And don't get me started on Giovanni, the Viridian enigma, whose Earth badge came with strings attached, fueling underground debates about true loyalty. These tensions weren't petty squabbles. They foreshadowed the cutthroat intensity of leagues to come. In Kanto, rivalries sharpened skills, but they also planted seeds of ambition that would bloom into global spectacles. Imagine the pressure, leaders scouting each other's rosters, trading secrets laced with one-upmanship. This competitive undercurrent, it became the heartbeat of every Pokémon League, where alliances fracture and triumphs are hard-fought. You feel that edge even now, in the way Unova's Elite Four eye their rivals with calculated smiles. Let's expand on how these rivalries played out, because they add layers to the mastery narrative. Take the annual Kanto Leader Summit, a hush-hush gathering in Saffron City, where badges were compared not just in shine, but in the trainers they produced. Brock once edged out Misty by mentoring a rising star who swept the circuit, but she countered the next year with a swimmer who revolutionized water-type metas. These clashes drove innovation, Brock experimenting with fossil revivals to counter Misty's fluidity, her in turn developing bubble shields that turned defense into offense. Giovanni lurked in the background, his Team Rocket ties adding a darker rivalry, challenging the others to keep their methods pure. You see, this wasn't just about badges, it was a forge for the soul of competition. Trainers like you absorbed it vicariously, pushing harder, knowing the leaders themselves never rested. And when those rivalries leaked into the wider world, they inspired the multi-region tournaments we love today, where Johto's Claire spars with Kanto's Lance, echoing those early tensions. But why does this matter to you, watching from your screen, maybe dreaming of your own journey? Because Kanto's gym system didn't just shape the game, it shaped you. Every time you strategize for a badge in your playthrough or real-life league, you're walking paths blazed by Brock's endurance and Misty's flow. It's the reason progression feels so rewarding. That 8th badge, the Earth one, isn't an end. It's a launch pad, whispering that discipline pays off. And those hidden rivalries? They remind us mastery isn't solitary, it's a web of challenges that make us stronger. In regions afar from the sandy dunes of Huan to the snowy peaks of Gala, trainers still pilgrimage to Kanto seeking the original fire. Why? To feel that foundational pulse, to earn a badge from the source and carry its discipline home. Delving further, consider the logistical genius behind it all. Kanto's gyms weren't built overnight. They evolved from ancient dojos and tribal challenges, refined into a network linked by the burgeoning PC system. Bill's invention allowed leaders to track trainer progress across the region, ensuring no one skipped steps. A kid beating Brock could have their data beamed to Misty instantly, prepping her for the next wave. This tech integration, it set the stage for global standards, where badges sync with international databases, letting a Kanto victor jump straight into Johto's circuit. You won't believe how this ripples. In Paldea, trastalizing techniques build on Kanto's type specialization, badges now shimmering with crystal facets that echo the originals. And the training methods? Let's unpack Misty's influence more. Her flow state drills, where Pokémon navigate currents blindfolded, taught reliance on senses beyond sight. Trainers worldwide adopted it for all types. Imagine a fire type weaving through heat mirages in Sinnoh, crediting Kanto's waves. Brock's core stability workouts, balancing on precarious ledges, prevented injuries and built resilience, now a staple in every region's prep camps. These aren't dusty relics. They're living legacies, evolving but rooted in Kanto's soil. Those rivalries added spice too. Ever hear the tale of the badge bet between Erica and Latina Surge? They wagered mentorship rights on whose gym produced the circuit's top scorer. Surge's electric blitzes clashed with Erica's vine traps in private bouts, birthing hybrid strategies that trainers still use. Giovanni's shadow loomed, his absences fueling speculation. Was he scouting for Rocket or plotting his own league bid? This intrigue kept the system dynamic, ensuring it never stagnated. You can trace it to modern leagues, where leaders form tentative alliances only to betray them in finals, that Kanto intensity alive and electric. As we trace this path, you start to see Kanto not as a starting line, but as the eternal forge. Every badge you earn carries its echo, every training session its discipline. But what happens when those mastered skills collide on the grandest stage? That's where our story escalates next in the electrifying saga of the birth of the Pokémon League, where Kanto's foundations ignite into a worldwide inferno of rivalry and glory. You won't want to miss how it all culminates, the birth of the Pokémon League. In 1999, India topped the windswept peaks of the Indigo Plateau. A crowd of over 10,000 trainers gathered under a sky streaked with the first hints of dawn, ready to witness something that would change Pokémon battling forever. That day marked the birth of the Pokémon League, the pinnacle of every trainer's dream, right here in Kanto. You know the thrill of challenging gyms, of earning those badges that feel like badges of honor on your jacket. But what if I told you that without this moment, none of that structured glory would exist? The league wasn't just an event, it was the forge that hammered out the rules of victory itself. Picture the scene through the eyes of those early participants. Kanto had already buzzed with informal battles for years, kids in pallet towns squaring off with their starters, veterans clashing in the shadows of Mut Moon. But chaos ruled. No standards, no fairness, just raw power and luck. Enter Professor Oak, that wise old mentor you've probably idolized since your first game. He saw the potential for something bigger, a system to channel that energy into a global force. Teaming up with regional leaders and even some wary Pokémon researchers, Oak proposed the Indigo League Conference. It would crown a true champion, not just the strongest battler, but the one who embodied harmony between human and Pokémon. And the venue? The Indigo Plateau, that majestic arena carved into the mountains between Kanto and Johto, a natural amphitheatre where the air hummed with electric anticipation. The first tournament kicked off with a bang, or rather, a thunderous roar from a wild Charizard circling overhead. 8 gym leaders from across Kanto, each a specialist in their element, had already vetted the top challengers. You had to earn your spot by collecting all 8 badges, a grueling path that tested strategy over brute force. Remember Brock's rock-solid defences in Pewter City, or Misty's watery traps in Cerulean? Those weren't random hurdles, they were the league's foundation, ensuring only the prepared made it to the plateau. As the sun climbed, the opening ceremony unfolded with speeches that echoed off the crags. Oak declared, "This is more than competition. It's the dawn of a new era where Pokémon and trainers rise together." The crowd erupted, and you can almost feel the goosebumps, can't you? That sense of history in the making. Now, let's dive into what made this tournament legendary. Victory wasn't about knocking out the most opponents. It was about claiming the champion title through a gauntlet of elimination rounds. The format? Single elimination brackets starting with 64 trainers whittled down over days of non-stop battles. Each match lasted until one side's team was fully defeated, but with a twist. No healing mid-battle, forcing you to think 3 steps ahead. The final showdown, a best-of-7 series against the Elite Four, those enigmatic guardians who'd been training in seclusion. Lorelei with her icy Glaceon, Bruno's muscle-bound Machamp, Agatha's ghostly Gengar, Lance's soaring Dragonite, and finally the sitting champion, who in those early days was a battle-hardened veteran named Alder, no relation to the Unovan, but a Kanto native who set the bar impossibly high. What you're about to uncover is how these rules didn't just stick in Kanto, they became the unbreakable backbone for every league worldwide. Take team composition. You could only bring 6 Pokémon into a match, chosen from your registered roster of 20 or so. No duplicates of species, and legendaries? Strictly off-limits for standard play, a rule born from early disasters where unchecked power imbalances ruined fair fights. Battle formats emphasised full team engagements, with switches allowed but at the cost of a turn. Pure strategy, no exploits. These weren't arbitrary, They came from heated debates in smoke-filled conference rooms at the plateau's base. Trainers argued, for hours, should items be banned? How do we prevent type spam? The consensus: balance above all. A Pokemon's level couldn't exceed 55 at entry, leveled up naturally through the journey, rewarding growth over grinding. And get this, you won't believe how quickly this blueprint spread. Within a year, Johto adopted it wholesale for their own Silver Conference, tweaking only the Elite Four lineup to fit their rugged terrain. Hearn followed suit in Slateport's halls, Kalos in Lumiosa's glittering towers. Why? Because Kanto's system worked. It turned battling from a free-for-all into a meritocracy, where smarts and bonds trumped sheer numbers. Imagine a young trainer in Sinnoh, staring at her Snowpoint badge, knowing the rules she's following trace back to that fateful day on Indigo Plateau. It's like Kanto handed the world a rulebook etched in stone, and every region etched their name into it. But hold on. Every origin story has its shadows, and the league's birth was no exception. As the first tournament raged on, whispers started circulating through the spectator stands. Trainers talking in hushed tones about matches that felt too perfect, too scripted. You see, in the rush to legitimize the league, not everyone was playing clean. A ring of corrupt officials, backed by shady investors from Saffron's underbelly, had infiltrated the judging panels. They rigged outcomes by tampering with Pokeballs, subtly altering capture rates, or even swapping Pokemon mid-storage via hacked PC systems. One infamous case involved a quarterfinal bout where a supposedly wild Venusaur suddenly knew moves it couldn't have learned naturally. The crowd booed, but the fix was in. The favoured trainer advanced, pocketing bets worth millions in poker dollars. The revelation hit like a hyper beam to the gut. Investigations launched by Oak himself uncovered a web of scandals that nearly toppled the whole structure. Bribes to gym leaders, falsified badge records, even attempts to influence the Elite Four with promises of corporate sponsorships from Silph Co's rivals. One key figure, a rogue coordinator named Harlan, confessed to orchestrating at least 5 matches, admitting he'd used experimental TMs to boost performance illegally. The media frenzy was relentless. Headlines screamed "League of Lies" across every Kanto newspaper. Trainers boycotted practice sessions and enrollment for the next cycle plummeted. You can feel the betrayal, right? That sinking realization that the dream you chased might be built on sand. Yet here's where Kanto's resilience shines through. Instead of crumbling, the league adapted. Oak and the gym leaders instituted ironclad reforms. Independent referees trained in anti-doping tech, random PC audits, and a zero-tolerance code of conduct. The scandals, as painful as they were, purified the system. They exposed weaknesses before the league could globalize, ensuring that when Johto linked up for joint events, the standards were spotless. Think about it. What if those early fixes hadn't happened? We'd have a fractured world of leagues, each with their own cheats and shortcuts. Instead, Kanto's trial by fire created a template of trust, one that every champion since has sworn to uphold. Let's zoom in on a personal story to bring this home. Take the winner of that inaugural tournament, a prodigy from Pallet Town, a kid named Red. Yeah, that Red. The silent legend whose journey became the stuff of textbooks. He entered the plateau with his loyal team, Venusaur, Charizard, Blastoise, the works. But in the semi-finals he faced a rigged opponent, a bulked-up Onyx that shrugged off water attacks like they were raindrops. Red didn't complain. He switched to his Pidgeot for aerial scouting, spotting the anomaly in the foe's movements. His win wasn't just skill, it was intuition honed on Kanto's trails. When the scandals broke post-tournament, Red's clean victory stood as a beacon, proving the system's heart was pure. His crowning as the first official champion, it redefined success, not as a title, but as a legacy of integrity. Expanding on the rule's global ripple, consider how they influenced tech integration. The league mandated standardized Pokeballs for fairness, spurring Silph Co to mass-produce the great balls we know today. Battle formats evolved to include time limits in later rounds, preventing endless stalls, a direct response to those early drawn-out fixes. And team composition? It birthed the concept of balanced parties, where you couldn't overload on one type. In Alola's Island challenge, they nod to this with their unique trials, but the 6 Pokémon cap remains sacred. Even in Galar's stadium spectacles, the champion match echoes Kanto's best of series, keeping that high-stakes tension alive. But why did these rules endure? Because they captured the essence of the trainer-Pokemon bond. You don't just command, you partner. Early tournaments highlighted this with mandatory post-battle check-ins, where vets examined Pokemon health on site. Scandals nearly erased that ethos, but survivors like Lorelei pushed for ethics clauses, banning any enhancement that harmed a Pokemon's well-being. Today, when you watch a World Coronation Series match, every fair play traces back to Kanto's hard lessons. It's humbling, isn't it? How one region's stumbles shaped a world's strides. Delving deeper into the Indigo Plateau's role, that site wasn't chosen lightly. Perched at 3,000 feet, it symbolized ascent, the climb from novice to elite. The arena's design, with its tiered fields adapting to weather and terrain, forced versatility. First tournament battles spanned grass meadows, rocky outcrops, even a flooded basin for water types. Rules specified field switches between rounds, preventing home field advantages. This innovation, copied everywhere, from Unova's tubular battle subway to Paldea's open terrains. Kanto set the stage, literally, for immersive, dynamic combat. The scandals. Near derailment adds a layer of suspense to the league's lore. Imagine the tension in Oak's lab as evidence piled up. Tampered data logs from Bill's nascent PC network, showing unauthorized transfers. Harlan's confession implicated over 20 trainers, some gym affiliates. The cleanup took months. Disqualifications, lawsuits, even a temporary league shutdown. But from the ashes rose the Pokemon League Association, a governing body with international observers. This body standardized doping tests, using Silph's new scopes to detect illicit moves. Without that crisis, would we have the robust oversight that keeps modern leagues clean? Probably not. It was Kanto's darkest hour that lit the path forward. To make this real for you, think of your own journeys. That time you battled a gym leader and felt the weight of every choice. That's the league's DNA at work. Red's triumph, the rules' rigidity, the scandal's shadow, they all converge to make every badge feel earned. As the first champion defended his title against waves of challengers, Kanto solidified its role as the origin point. Johto scouts attended that tournament, taking notes furiously, ensuring their league synced seamlessly. Soon, economic ties boomed, shared plateau access, joint training camps. It's how Kanto's model became the global heartbeat. Yet, the human element can't be overlooked. Trainers like Blue, Red's rival, pushed the envelope ethically. Blue's loss in the finals, it fueled his growth into a gym leader, advocating for rule tweaks that favoured underdogs. The scandals tested loyalties, some quit, but most doubled down, forming fan clubs that evolved into official support networks. You see echoes in today's communities, where forums debate rule evolutions, always circling back to Kanto's core. As we wrap this chapter on the league's explosive birth, consider the fragility of greatness. From Indigo's triumphs to its near-falls, Kanto didn't just create a tournament, it birthed a movement. But how did these foundations echo outward, rippling across maps and reshaping distant lands? That's what we'll uncover in the next chapter, Echoes Across the Map, where you'll see Kanto's shadow stretch in ways that will blow your mind. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss how one region's blueprint redrew the world. Echoes Across the Map. Did you know that the Pokemon League format we all take for granted today, with its 8 gyms, badges and Grand Championship battles, didn't just stay confined to Kanto's borders? It spread like wildfire, reshaping the entire world of Pokemon training into a global phenomenon. That's the story of how Kanto's blueprint echoed across the map, turning isolated regional rivalries into a unified circuit that connected trainers from every corner of the planet. Let's dive right into this. Picture the ripple effect starting closest to home. Johto, that neighbouring region with its misty mountains and ancient ruins, was the first to feel Kanto's pull, right. After Kanto's league solidified its structure in the wake of legendary trainers like Red claiming victory, Johto's leaders looked across the sea and saw opportunity. Why reinvent the wheel when you had a proven system? They adopted the core model almost wholesale, 8 gyms scattered across the land, each specialising in types that challenged trainers to build balanced teams. But it wasn't a blind copy. Johto infused its own flavour, emphasising folklore and tradition, Think of the twisted spires of the Dark Gym in Ecrutake City, echoing Kanto's Viridian but with a ghostly twist. This adaptation sparked the first inter-regional exchange. Trainers from Kanto began crossing into Johto, badges in hand, aiming for a double challenge. Suddenly, what was once a local rite of passage became a stepping stone to something bigger. You can almost hear the excitement building, can't you? That sense of adventure expanding beyond familiar routes. And it didn't stop there. As word spread through travelling merchants and battle-hungry wanderers, regions further afield took notice. Hoenn, with its volcanic islands and vast oceans, was next in line. Isolated by water, Hoenn had its own rough-and-tumble battling traditions, more like surfing contests than structured leagues. But Kanto's influence arrived via trade ships loaded with Pokeballs and the latest Silph Co gadgets. By the time the Hoenn League formalised, it mirrored Kanto's 8-gym setup, complete with elite trainers guarding the path to the Pokemon League. Imagine a young trainer from Lava Ridge Town, sweating through a fire-type gym battle that feels straight out of Cinnabar Island, but with the added thrill of surfing between islands to collect badges. This wasn't just imitation, it was evolution. Hoenn added environmental twists, like water-based challenges that tested not just strength but harmony with the sea. Yet, at its heart, Kanto's framework provided the skeleton, predictable, scalable, and irresistibly competitive. Now here's where it gets truly revolutionary. These adoptions didn't happen in a vacuum. They created a unified global competition circuit, linking regions through shared rules and mutual recognition. Think about it. A badge from Kanto's Pewter Gym could count toward entry in Johto's league if you proved your mettle in a crossover tournament. The Pokémon Association, that shadowy international body, stepped in to standardize it all. They established the World Championship Series, where top trainers from each region converged on rotating host cities, first Kanto's Indigo Plateau, then Johto's Silver Conference, and onward. You, as a viewer who's probably dreamed of your own journey, can feel the pull of this network. It's like the Olympics for Pokémon, but with evolutions and type matchups adding layers of strategy. Suddenly a kid in Pallet Town isn't just aiming for local glory, they're prepping for a shot at the world stage, where opponents from Sinnoh's snowy peaks or Unova's urban sprawl bring entirely new tactics. But let's talk numbers, because this global circuit didn't just change the game, it exploded the economy. Standardized tournaments meant big money. Sponsors flocked in, from Pokeball manufacturers to energy drink brands tailored for trainers on the go. In Kanto, the Indigo League already drew crowds that rivaled major sports events, but multiply that by regions. Johto's adaptations led to tourism booms. Visitors poured into Goldenrod City for pre-league expos, boosting local businesses by millions. Hoenn took it further, turning its league into a spectacle with underwater arenas and aerial battles, attracting international broadcasters. The economic ripple? Pokémon battling transformed from a grassroots passion into a full-blown international industry. Revenue from ticket sales, merchandise, and licensing deals skyrocketed. We're talking billions in global trade, TM machines in every major city, custom Pokédex apps syncing data across borders, even Pokémon-themed resorts popping up in neutral zones between regions. You might wonder, how did this all sustain itself? It was the standardization that made it stick. Kanto's model provided the rule set: fair play, type diversity, no banned moves unless globally agreed. This created jobs everywhere. Gym leaders as celebrities, referees trained in international academies, even economists analysing battle trends for betting markets. In Hoenn, the league's economic impact funded coral reef restorations, tying battling to conservation. Johto used its share to preserve historic sites, blending culture with commerce. And Kanto, it reaped the rewards as the originator, with Silph Co exporting tech that powered these events. The industry fed back into research too, better healing machines, advanced trading systems, all tracing roots to Kanto's innovations. Of course, no spread is without its wrinkles. Here's the twist that makes this echo so fascinating. While Kanto inspired the world, those subtle adaptations in foreign leagues reveal its influence as both a liberating force and a subtle constraint. Take Sinnoh, which joined the circuit later. They adopted the 8-gym structure but layered in mystical elements, like time-space distortions in their challenges, nodding to Kanto's Mewtwo legacy without copying it outright. Yet, you see the constraint in how they couldn't stray too far, deviating to, say, 10 gyms risked incompatibility with the global circuit, alienating trainers and sponsors. Unova pushed boundaries with its dual protagonist and urban flair, but even there, the badge quest felt Cantonian at its core, a linear path to power that echoed Red's journey. These tweaks added flavour. Kalos with its fairy-type innovations, Alola with its island trials instead of traditional gyms, but they all orbited Kanto's gravitational pull. It was inspiration, yes, giving regions a foundation to build dreams on, but it also constrained, locking in a competitive mould that prioritised escalation over reinvention. What if a region wanted a league based purely on friendship bonds, without the battle grind? The global standard made it tough. Integration meant compromise. This tension played out in real ways. Remember the early inter-regional summits? Held in neutral spots like the Orange Islands, they hashed out rules, but Kanto reps always held sway, their experience as the template giving them veto power on major changes. Trainers felt it too. You training in Galar might master its Dynamax gimmick, but to compete globally, you'd adapt back to Kanto-style basics. It's a double-edged sword. Unity breeds excitement, but it can stifle wild creativity. Still, the booms were undeniable. Economic reports from the era show battling contributing up to 15% of some regions' GDP, with Kanto-Johto linkages as the model. Their shared border facilitated the first mega-markets, trainers swapping rare candies in border towns, leagues co-hosting events that drew crowds from Hoenn and beyond. Let's zoom in on a story that captures this perfectly. There was this trainer from Johto, a kid named Elm. Wait, not that Elm, but inspired by the Professor's tales, who crossed into Kanto post-league victory. He challenged the Elite Four, blending Johto's steel types with Kanto's electrics, and sparked a trend. Soon, hybrid teams became the norm, with tournaments offering bonuses for cross-regional synergy. Economically, it was gold. Merchandise lines featuring Kanto-Johto fusion plushies flew off shelves. Hoenn jumped on board with shipping lanes dedicated to trainer ferries, turning the seas into highways of ambition. The industry grew tentacles, academies teaching league strategies, apps predicting matchup odds, even insurance for Pokémon in transit. All because Kanto dared to codify the chaos into something scalable, and the cultural ties? They deepened the economic web. Kanto's festivals, like the Lavender Town Remembrance events, inspired Johto's lantern releases, drawing tourists who then battled in local gyms. Hoenn's diving contest echoed Kanto's underwater explorations, but amplified with league tie-ins. This wasn't just business, it was a shared identity. Trainers everywhere reference Kanto's originals, Pikachu as the mascot, Charizard as the icon, cementing its role as the cultural North Star. The global circuit amplified this, with world champs often hailing from Kanto roots, their stories broadcast in every puck centre. But pause for a second. What does this mean for you, the aspiring trainer listening in? It means your journey isn't isolated. That starter in your bag connects you to a lineage of global giants. The league's adaptations show Kanto's echo isn't domineering, it's collaborative, pushing regions to innovate within bounds. Yet those constraints hint at untapped potential. What if the circuit evolved further? The economic might is there, fueling research into sustainable battling, ethical tech, even interstellar dreams whispered in labs. As we wrap up these echoes, consider how this global web sets the stage for something even more profound. Up next, in Chapter 5, Capturing the Essence, we'll uncover how Kanto didn't just structure the battles, it captured the very soul of what it means to bond with Pokémon in ways that still define every region today. You won't want to miss how this essence turns ordinary encounters into legendary tales. Capturing the Essence. What if I told you that the simple red and white sphere in your hand holds the key to Kanto's greatest gift to the Pokémon world? The Pokéball, that unassuming device, didn't just change how we catch Pokémon, it transformed the very way humans and Pokémon connect across the globe. Before Kanto's breakthroughs, capturing a wild Pokémon was a rare privilege, something reserved for the elite trainers or those lucky few with ancient methods passed down through generations. But in the labs of Saffron City, everything shifted. Revolution starting in the bustling workshops of Silph Co, where engineers poured their ingenuity into making capture not just possible, but universal. It was the early days of organised Pokémon research, right after the first gym leaders had set their challenges in places like Pewter and Cerulean. trainers like you and me were out there, relying on handmade nets or improvised lures that often stressed the Pokémon more than bonded with them. Then came the mass production era. Silph's assembly lines cranked out thousands of these balls, standardizing the design with a lightweight alloy shell and a core that harnessed gentle energy waves. Suddenly a kid from Pallet Town could afford one, no noble lineage required. This wasn't luxury, it was democratization. Pokémon bonds, once the domain of a select few, became accessible to every aspiring trainer wandering the routes between Viridian and Lavender Town. You can feel the ripple effect in the stories from that time. Take a young traveller on Route 1, fumbling with their first ball, heart pounding as they approach a wild Rattata. Before mass production, that moment might have ended in frustration or worse, a failed attempt leaving both human and Pokémon wary. But with Kanto's innovation, success rates soared, and the capture process emphasized harmony over conquest. The ball's mechanism, tuned to read a Pokémon's energy signature, only activates when there's mutual potential for partnership. It's why you'll hear tales from elders in Celadon City about how these balls sparked lifelong friendships, turning solitary wild Pokémon into loyal companions who explored caves and forests side by side. This shift didn't just fill teams, it wove humans deeper into the Pokémon ecosystem, fostering a culture of respect that spread like wildfire, and respect, that's where the real genius lies. As production scaled up, so did the ethical debates raging in Kanto's academic circles. Researchers in Yalm, the Future City Institute, worried about the psychological toll on captured Pokémon. Were these devices tools of freedom or subtle cages? In response, Kanto's innovators didn't ignore the concerns. They evolved. They introduced variants that tailored the capture experience to the environment and the creature's needs, ensuring no harm came to either side. Think about the early Great Ball prototype, designed with a reinforced seal to handle feistier Pokémon like the territorial Mankey packs in the Northern Hills. It used a calming electromagnetic pulse, reducing stress levels by up to 40%, according to the original Silph reports. This wasn't just engineering, it was empathy baked into technology. These advancements set a precedent that echoed far beyond Kanto's borders. When Johto emerged as a neighbouring region, their artisans in Goldenrod City adapted Kanto's Great Ball into something more robust for their rugged terrains. But the core principle remained: capture as collaboration. Fast forward to Hoenn's oceanic expanses, and you'll see the dive ball, a direct descendant of Kanto's experimental underwater containment spheres. Developed to gently scoop up Pokémon like Tentacool without disrupting coral reefs, it addressed the ethical snag of invasive captures in sensitive habitats. Silph's data on pressure-resistant materials influenced that design, making sure the ball's vacuum seal mimicked natural currents rather than forcing them. You won't believe how this trickled down. Even in Sinnoh's icy wilds, the Dusk Ball owes its low-light activation to Kanto's nocturnal variant trials, where engineers tested balls that only engaged under moonlight to respect Pokémon's rest cycles. But let's dive deeper into how these innovations reshaped the global landscape. In Unova, with its urban sprawl, the Quick Ball variant, quick to deploy for fast-moving city dwellers, traces its roots to Kanto's speed-enhanced prototypes, aimed at minimizing chase times that could exhaust wild Pokémon. Ethical watchdogs in Castelia City praised it for cutting down on prolonged pursuits, which often led to injuries. And don't get me started on the luxury ball, born from Kanto's comfort-focused experiments in the Pokémon fan club dens of Vermilion. These balls lined the interiors with soft adaptive padding that simulated a Pokémon's preferred habitat, whether forest moss or sandy dunes. The influence? Regions like Kalos adopted similar luxury lines for their fashion-forward trainers, but it all started with Kanto's push to make every capture feel like an invitation, not an imposition. Of course, not every idea made it to the shelves. As you explore this chapter of Pokémon history, you'll uncover how Kanto's relentless innovation came with risks that shaped our safeguards today. The Master Ball, that legendary 100% capture guarantee, wasn't always the flawless tool we revere. Its precursor emerged from Silph's high-security vaults, designed for legendary encounters like the elusive birds soaring over the Seafoam Islands. But the ethical innovations extended here too. Early models included fail-safes to prevent overuse, ensuring no trainer could hoard rares without purpose. This philosophy influenced everything from Alola's Beast Balls, tuned for Ultra Beasts with non-lethal containment fields, to Gala's even more specialized variants that account for Dynamax energies. Kanto didn't just invent, it set the moral compass, reminding us that power without principle could fracture the bonds we cherish. Now, imagine the what-ifs that linger in dusty archives. Deep in the forgotten corners of Kanto's labs, prototypes gathered dust, unstable tech that could have rewritten capture norms entirely. These weren't your standard balls. They were experimental hybrids blending organic materials from rare berries with synthetic energy cores. One such device, codenamed Project Harmony, aimed to forge instant empathic links upon capture, allowing trainers to sense their Pokemon's emotions from the start. Sounds revolutionary, right? But tests in the power plant ruins showed volatility, balls that overloaded, releasing erratic bursts of psychic energy that disoriented entire herds of wild electric types. Another prototype, the Echo Ball, was meant to clone a Pokemon's voice for communication aids, addressing concerns about misunderstood commands in battles. Yet, it backfired spectacularly, amplifying cries into deafening echoes that scattered Pokemon for miles. You have to wonder, what if these had succeeded? A world where captures weren't just physical but deeply intuitive, bonds forming in seconds rather than through patient training. Ethical alarms rang loud. The potential for manipulation was too high, trainers puppeteering Pokemon like extensions of themselves. Kanto's oversight committees shelved them, but whispers of their blueprints leaked to distant regions. In Paldea, experimental Terra Balls hint at similar empathetic tech, stabilized after centuries of refinement. Even the Master Ball's unerring accuracy? It evolved from those risky prototypes, with safeguards added to prevent the forever capture scenarios that haunted early simulations. Pokemon trapped indefinitely, their wills eroded. These forgotten relics remind us how close we came to a different path, one where accessibility tipped into overreach, forever altering the wild's balance. This legacy of thoughtful evolution is why Kanto stands as the essence of capture tech. Every ball you toss today, from the humble Poké to the exotic, carries that DNA, mass-produced for the masses, varied for ethics, and tempered by lessons from near misses. It's the reason a trainer in Galar can bond with a Yamper as effortlessly as one in Kanto with a Pikachu, all because those early innovations made the impossible routine. You feel it in the thrill of a successful catch, the quiet understanding that grows between partners. Without Kanto, our journeys might still be solitary treks, not the shared adventures that define us. As we wrap up this dive into the heart of capture, you're probably pondering how these tangible tools paved the way for something even more intangible. Up next in Digital Frontiers, we'll uncover how Kanto's physical breakthroughs leaped into the virtual realm, revolutionizing storage and connection in ways that bind the Pokemon world tighter than ever. What secrets await in that code? Stick around, you won't want to miss it. But hold on, let's not rush past the human stories that bring this all alive. Remember Professor Oak's own anecdotes from his pallet lab. He often spoke of the first mass-produced batch arriving just in time for a surge of young trainers, how it turned his research station into a hub of excitement. One boy, barely 10, captured his first Bulbasaur with a ball fresh off the line, and that moment ignited a lifelong passion that took him to the Indigo Plateau. These aren't just tech specs, they're the sparks of dreams. And ethically, the variants addressed real fears. Campaigns in Saffron rallied against soul-snaring myths, leading to transparency laws that mandated ball inspections for humane standards. Silph Co even hosted public demos, showing how Ultra Ball's expanded capacity respected territorial Pokemon by allowing space to roam within. Expanding on the global influence, consider how Kanto's dive ball lineage affected aquatic regions profoundly. In Hoen's Slateport markets, fishermen adopted adapted versions to study rather than exploit, boosting marine conservation efforts. Ethical tweaks ensured no deep-sea dwellers like Relicanth suffered decompression sickness upon surfacing. Similarly, the Nest Ball, inspired by Kanto's habitat simulators for bird Pokemon like Pidgeiflox, influenced Unova's net balls for bug types, creating meshes that mimicked webs without stickiness. Pure genius for non-violent containment. You see, each variant wasn't isolated. They formed a web of shared knowledge, with Kanto at the centre, exporting designs via trade routes to Johto and beyond. Those unstable prototypes. Let's linger on their intrigue. Project Harmony's empathic core drew from Mew's psychic essence, smuggled data from Cinnabar's underbelly. Tests with Abra showed promise, trainers hearing thoughts like "I'm ready to battle" or "I need rest." But instability struck. One overload fused a ball with a wild Drowsy's dream world, causing trainers nearby to hallucinate for days. The Echo Ball fared no better. Intended to bridge language gaps, it instead echoed commands back distorted, turning Use Thunderbolt into chaotic roars that panicked stadium crowds during early league trials. Shelved for good reason, yet their echoes persist. Modern apps in Kalos use simplified versions for translation devices, a nod to what might have been. In Kanto's cultural fabric, these balls became symbols. Festivals in Celadon featured capture, reenactments with replica variants, teaching ethics to kids. Trainers swapped stories of ethical dilemmas, like choosing a heal ball for an injured wild Pokémon over a standard one, prioritizing care. This mindset exported outward, shaping codes in every region. Even villainous groups eyeing the tech learned from Kanto's failsafes. Team Rocket's crude replicas often backfired due to ignored ethics, a cautionary tale. The revolution's depth. It empowered marginalized trainers too. In rural areas like Route 10, where resources were scarce, affordable balls meant equal footing. A girl from a fishing family in Vermilion caught her first Magikarp, dreaming of the seas, all thanks to mass access. Bonds flourished, communities strengthened. Kanto didn't just produce balls, it produced possibilities. As we edge toward those digital horizons, reflect on how capture's essence, physical, ethical, revolutionary, sets the stage for boundless innovation. Digital frontiers awaits, promising revelations on how Kanto digitized these bonds, turning pockets into portals. Curious yet, you should be. Digital frontiers. In the heart of Kanto, during the late 20th century of the Pokémon calendar, a young inventor named Bill changed everything with a single breakthrough. His creation of the PC storage system wasn't just a gadget. It was the birth of a digital revolution that turned scattered Pokémon care into a unified global network. You see, before Bill, trainers were limited to carrying just 6 Pokémon at a time, relying on makeshift solutions like hidden ranches or risky wild releases. But Bill, obsessed with efficiency, built the first prototype in his Pallet Town basement, using early computer tech to digitize Pokémon data. Imagine the thrill when he first tested it. His own Clefairy, scanned and stored as pure information, ready to be retrieved anywhere with a compatible terminal. That invention didn't stay local for long. Bill's system quickly caught the eye of Kanto's burgeoning tech sector, especially after he refined it to handle not just storage, but real-time health monitoring and evolutionary tracking. Suddenly, Pokémon weren't just companions. They were data points in a vast ecosystem. Trainers could deposit their teams at any Pokémon Center, and the system would beam them to a central server farm in Saffron City. This wasn't magic. It was cutting-edge networking powered by Kanto's early adoption of fiber optic cables and satellite relays. By the time the first Pokémon League tournaments went international, Bill's PC had evolved into the backbone of Pokémon logistics worldwide. You could be battling in a stadium in Johto, and with a quick access code, swap out your tired Pidgeot for a fresh one waiting in a Kanto vault. It's the kind of seamless connectivity that makes you wonder, how did one region's ingenuity ripple out to connect every corner of the Pokémon world? Let's break it down step by step, because the story of how this happened is as fascinating as any gym battle. Bill started small, coding the system on a clunky terminal that could barely handle basic arithmetic. But he drew inspiration from Kanto's natural advantages. Its dense urban centres like Celadon and Vermilion provided the perfect testing grounds. Early versions used magnetic tape for backups, but Bill pushed for something bolder, a distributed network where data could flow between centres without human intervention. The key was the protocol he developed, called PokeNet, which encrypted Pokémon profiles with unique biometric signatures. No more mix-ups. Your Pikachu's lightning bolt patterns were as individual as a fingerprint. By the mid-80s, Silph Co had licensed the tech, mass-producing PC terminals that popped up in every major city. Trainers flocked to them, and word spread fast. A kid in Viridian Forest could now store extras and focus on the journey, knowing their team was safe in the cloud. Well, the pre-cloud equivalent. What made this truly global was Kanto's foresight in infrastructure. While other regions were still sketching out their first highways, Kanto had invested heavily in server hubs after the economic boom from the Indigo League. These weren't just warehouses, they were fortified data centers with redundant power supplies and cooling systems designed to withstand even a rampaging Onyx. The early servers in the Fuchsia city outskirts could process thousands of transfers per hour, using microwave towers to link up with emerging networks in Hoenn and Sinnoh. Seamless transfers between regions. They stemmed directly from this setup. Picture a trainer crossing the sea from Kanto to Johto on a ferry. Mid-voyage, they hit a Pokémon Center in Oliven, and boom, their stored Charizard arrives instantly via undersea cables laid from Vermilion Port. No delays, no borders. This enabled worldwide exchanges that reshaped breeding programs and competitive play. Rare eggs from Unova could be shipped digitally to Kanto breeders, fostering a biodiversity boom that you still see in modern tournaments. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. This network didn't just move Pokémon, it democratized knowledge. Each PC transfer logged data on habitats, movesets, and even emotional bonds, creating a massive database that researchers tapped into. Bill himself became a celebrity, consulting on expansions that integrated AI for predictive analytics, like warning if a Pokémon was stressed from over-travel. You might recall those old stories of trainers pushing limits, only to have the system flag a burnout risk. It humanized the tech, making sure the digital side served the real bonds. And globally, regions like Kalos modelled their own systems after Kanto's, but they all connected back to the original hubs. A battle in Alola could pull data from Kanto servers faster than you can say Z'd move, thanks to those foundational links. It's why international trades feel effortless today. Kanto's early server infrastructure set the standard, turning isolated adventures into a shared planetary experience. Of course, no revolution comes without its shadows. As the network grew, so did the risks, and Kanto faced the first major test in what nearly became a catastrophe. In the early days of global rollout, a data breach hit the Saffron servers hard. Hackers, rumoured to be rogue elements from an upstart group inspired by Team Rocket, exploited a vulnerability in the encryption protocols. They didn't steal Pokémon, but they accessed profiles, exposing sensitive info like trainer locations and rare species data. Thousands of entries were compromised, leading to poaching spikes and trust issues that rippled outward. Bill worked around the clock to patch it, introducing multi-factor authentication and quantum-resistant keys, but the damage was done. That incident revealed flaws still plaguing modern networks. Over-reliance on centralized hubs makes them juicy targets, and even today, cybersecurity experts in Gala cite the Kanto breach as a cautionary tale. You have to ask yourself, in a world where your entire team lives in the digital ether, how secure is secure enough? The breach forced Kanto to innovate further, turning vulnerability into strength. Post-incident upgrades included decentralized backups across the region. Think hidden servers in the CVI Islands, synced in real time. This not only fortified the system, but inspired global protocols, like the International Pokémon Data Accord, which mandates shared security standards. Trainers benefited directly. Now, when you deposit your Eevee at a center in Lumiose City, it's shielded by layers of Kanto-derived tech. But the human element, that's where the real story lies. Bill often shared anecdotes from that era, like the time a young trainer's hacked profile led to a surprise reunion with a long-lost family Pokémon. It highlighted how the PC system wove personal stories into the global fabric, creating connections that transcended regions. Diving deeper, consider the everyday impact on Pokémon care. Before the PC, overpopulation in wild areas was a crisis. Trainers releasing captures they couldn't handle disrupted ecosystems. Bill's system curbed that by offering unlimited storage, with automated rotation suggestions to prevent neglect. Health scans became routine. A Pokémon deposited with a fever would trigger alerts to the nearest center, complete with treatment protocols drawn from Kanto's vast database. Globally, this meant regions with harsh climates like the frozen tundras of Sinnoh could rely on Kanto's warm servers to simulate ideal conditions during storage. Transfers weren't just logistical, they were life-saving. A trainer in the desert expanses of Unova could swap in a water type from Kanto's aquatic reserves, adapting teams on the fly. And the exchanges, they fueled a cultural renaissance. Breeders in Hoenn traded Kanto starters for tropical variants, blending gene, pools that birthed hybrid strategies dominating world championships. Competitive leagues standardized rules around PC access, ensuring fairness. No one gets an edge from regional silos. You can feel the excitement in those old league footage. Announcers hyping a mid-battle transfer, the crowd roaring as a legendary like Mewtwo's data pings in from a secure vault. But it wasn't all smooth. Early bandwidth limits caused glitches, like delayed evolutions that turned battles into nail-biters. Kanto's engineers iterated relentlessly, upgrading to broadband relays that now handle petabytes of data daily. The twist of that breach lingers, though, reminding us of the stakes. Modern vulnerabilities echo the original. Phishing scams targeting trainer accounts, or AI-driven attacks probing for weak links in the chain. Experts debate if full decentralization, like blockchain for Pokémon data, could eliminate them, but Kanto's model persists because it works. Bill passed away years ago, but his legacy endures in every beep of a PC terminal. Trainers worldwide owe their fluid journeys to that basement invention, a testament to how one region's digital leap bridged worlds. Think about your own adventures. Have you ever mid-journey pulled a powerhouse from storage and turned the tide? That's Kanto's gift, pure and simple. It transformed Pokémon from local pets to global citizens, their data flowing like the winds over Mount Silver. Yet, as interconnected as we've become, the roots trace back to those early servers, vulnerabilities and all. It's a story of triumph, laced with caution, pushing us to safeguard the networks that bind us. As we wrap up this dive into the digital frontiers that Kanto pioneered, you're probably pondering how these tech ties fostered even deeper regional bonds. That's exactly what we'll explore next in Harmonious Beginnings, where the seamless link between Kanto and its neighbour reveals the blueprint for every multi-region harmony in the Pokémon world. You won't want to miss how it all clicked into place. Harmonious Beginnings. In the heart of Kanto, where the first Pokédex pages turned and the initial gym badges gleamed under the sun, something revolutionary took root. Humans and Pokémon didn't just coexist, they began to weave their lives together in ways that would define every region to come. What if I told you that Kanto's everyday harmony wasn't always so seamless? Let's dive into how this region laid the groundwork for bonds that power the world. Picture yourself walking through the bustling streets of Saffron City on a typical morning. A young trainer chats with their Pikachu over breakfast, while across the way, a Machop hauls crates at the docks, muscles rippling with effortless strength. This isn't fantasy, it's the norm Kanto pioneered. From the very start, Kanto trainers learned that Pokémon weren't mere battle partners, they were family, helpers, and even co-workers. You see, when the first waves of aspiring trainers set out from Pallet Town, they carried more than a starter Pokémon. They carried an unspoken rule: integration starts at home. Families in Viridian welcomed Oddish into their gardens, not just to battle, but to tend the soil, their vines gently loosening the earth for better yields. Fishermen in Vermilion cast lines with the aid of Poliwag, who dove deep to scout the best spots, turning a solitary job into a synchronized dance between species. But how did this all begin? It traces back to those early days after the Pokédex's invention. Professor Oak and his contemporaries realized that for Pokémon to thrive alongside humans, the relationship had to evolve beyond wild encounters. They encouraged what they called daily symbiosis. In Cerulean, water Pokémon like Staryu assisted in irrigation systems, channeling streams to farmlands without a drop wasted. Up in the snowy peaks of Mount Moon, Geodude helped miners clear paths, their rocky forms tougher than any tool. You can almost hear the echoes of those first collaborations, the grunt of effort from a human, the determined chirp from a Pokémon. It wasn't about domination, it was partnership, and this model spread like wildfire because it worked. Villages that adopted it saw bumper crops, safer travels, and communities that felt unbreakable. Now think about your own journeys in the games. Remember helping out in the Pokémon daycare where eggs hatched under careful watch? That stems directly from Kanto's push for nurturing roles. Pokémon weren't sidelined to Pokeballs, they roamed free in homes, learning tricks that blurred the line between pet and professional. A Pidgey might deliver messages between towns faster than any bike, while a Jigglypuff entertained children at night, its songs lulling worries away. These weren't random acts, they were the blueprint. Kanto's leaders, from mayors to Oak himself, documented these integrations in early journals, emphasizing that true strength came from trust, not commands. By the time the Indigo League formalized, every challenger had internalized it. Your Pokemon's loyalty mirrored your own care. Yet, as these norms took hold, Kanto didn't keep them to itself. They celebrated them, turning quiet partnerships into spectacles that captivated the world. Enter the festivals, the beating heart of Kanto's cultural export. Have you ever wondered why Pokémon parades feel so universal, from Hoenn's contests to Sinnoh's pageants? It all loops back to Kanto's Harmony Fest, held annually in Celadon City. Picture throngs of people lining the streets, cheering as trainers and their Pokémon perform synchronized routines. A Venusaur blooms flowers in rhythm with a flute melody, while a squad of Rattata races in perfect formation, dodging obstacles like pros. These weren't just shows, they were statements. Kanto's founders used them to showcase how integration enriched life, drawing envoys from neighbouring lands who left inspired. Johto, right, next door absorbed it all like a sponge. Their own traditions, like the Kimono Girls dances with Eevee evolutions, owe a debt to Kanto's festivals. You know those elegant performances in Ecruteak? They evolved from Kanto's bond-celebrating events, where humans and Pokémon mirrored each other's grace to honour their unity. But it went deeper. Kanto exported ideals through travelling troupes, groups of performers who crossed borders, teaching Johto locals how to incorporate Pokémon into festivals. Suddenly, Goldenrod's markets buzzed with Pokémon-assisted crafts, abra-teleporting goods to stalls in a blink. Johto's leaders, seeing the joy and efficiency, wove these into their own lore, blending Kanto's harmony with their folklore. It's why you feel that familial warmth in Heart Gold or Soul Silver. Kanto's influence made it feel like home, no matter where you roam. These festivals did more than entertain, they educated. At the core of every Harmony Fest was a message. Bonds aren't accidental, they're built. Trainers shared stories of their Pokémon saving them from rock slides or sharing meals after the tough battles. One tale that always sticks is from the first fest in Fuchsia City. A weary Kangaskhan, usually reclusive, joined a human family on stage, her Joey playfully tossing berries to the crowd. The applause that followed? It echoed across regions, inspiring Johto to create their own Bond Blooms, where springtime sees Bulbasaur and Chikorita planting trees together. You can see the ripple. Kanto's harmonious ideals didn't just influence traditions, they redefined them, turning potential rivals into allies. But here's where it gets intriguing. For all the glowing accounts, Kanto's story of harmony hides shadows. What if those foundational relationships weren't always so idyllic? Dig into suppressed records, ones tucked away in Oak's archives and only recently unearthed, and you'll find a revelation that flips the script. Early conflicts nearly shattered everything. In the years before the Pokédex, when Pokémon were still emerging from the wild en masse, clashes erupted. Farmers in Pewter clashed with aggressive Onyx burrowing too close to homes, leading to standoffs that left both sides scarred. Trainers, eager but untrained, pushed their starters too hard, sparking resentment that rippled through packs of wild Pokémon. One overlooked incident in the Viridian Forest involved a horde of Beedrill turning on loggers, not out of malice, but fear from encroaching settlements. These weren't minor skirmishes, they threatened to fracture the fragile trust being built. You might ask, how could such harmony arise from near disaster? The answer lies in Kanto's resilience. Leaders like Oak stepped in, not with force, but dialogue. They hosted secret summits, humans and Pokémon representatives, using interpreters like Meowth to bridge gaps. Policies emerged, no-poach zones in forests, shared labour agreements that gave Pokémon rest days. Suppressed reports detail how one such conflict in Cinnabar, involving a rampaging Magmar scorching fields, led to the first reparation bonds. The human farmers nursed the weakened Pokémon back to health, forging alliances that became legend. These early fractures, hidden to preserve the ideal, actually strengthened the norms. They taught that integration demands empathy, not assumption. Without them, Kanto's model might have crumbled, leaving regions divided. Imagine the weight of that secret. For decades, textbooks painted Kanto as a paradise from day one, glossing over the grit. But those records reveal heroes on both sides, Pokémon who chose peace over retaliation, humans who learned humility. It's a reminder that your favourite region's foundations were forged in fire. Take the labour side. Post-conflict, Kanto refined roles meticulously. A graveler in Rock Tunnel now hauls ore with scheduled breaks, its rumbling thanks echoing through the caves. Companionship deepened too. Stories of orphaned Cubone finding solace with human kids became policy, with adoption centres sprouting in every town. You feel it in the games, the way your starter nuzzles you after victory. That's Kanto's legacy, tempered by trials. As these norms solidified, the festivals amplified the healed narrative. Harmony Fest evolved, incorporating remembrance dances that subtly nodded to past struggles without dwelling. Johto picked up on this subtlety, their traditions emphasizing reconciliation, like the annual Echo Rites where ghost Pokémon and trainers reenact old pacts. It's profound. Kanto's export wasn't blind optimism, but hard-won wisdom. Regions like Unova later mirrored it in their own Unity events, all tracing back to that Kanto spark. Let's zoom in on a real-world parallel in the Pokémon lore. Consider Bill's PC system, not just tech but a symbol of integration. Storing Pokémon safely allowed them to rest while humans travelled, preventing overwork that fueled early conflicts. Or think of the Safari Zone in Fuchsia, where capture was gentle, respecting wild boundaries. These innovations stemmed from those suppressed lessons, ensuring labour remained voluntary, companionship genuine. Stepping back, it's astonishing how Kanto turned potential catastrophe into a global standard. Every time you see a Pokémon helping in a Kalos cafe or battling in Gala's stadiums, you're witnessing echoes of those Viridian fields. The revelation changes how you view the harmony. It's not innate, it's earned. And that depth, it makes every bond in your playthrough feel more real. But harmony has its architects, and not all operated in the light. While Kanto built these ideals, shadowy forces lurked, ready to exploit them. Up next, in Chapter 8, Silph Co's Shadow Empire, we'll uncover how one corporation twisted integration into something far more sinister, pulling strings that reached every corner of the Pokémon world. You won't want to miss how their innovations hid a darker agenda that still influences today, Silph Co's Shadow Empire. In the heart of Kanto, where innovation met ambition, Silph Co didn't just build a company, they forged an empire that quietly reshaped how trainers everywhere connect with their Pokémon. Founded in the bustling industrial hub of Saffron City, Silph Co started as a modest research firm in the early days of organised Pokémon training. But by the time the first Pokémon League was solidifying its rules, it had become the undisputed giant of technological advancement. You know those moments when you point a device at a wild Pokémon and instantly learn its stats, types and weaknesses? That's no accident. Silph Co pioneered the Scope, a handheld analyzer that turned guesswork into precision science, standardizing Pokémon analysis across the region and beyond. For a second, not literally, but let it sink in. Before Silph, trainers relied on folklore, trial and error battles, or the occasional scribbled notes from gym leaders. A Pikachu might look cute, but without knowing its electric typing or speed stats, you could be in for a shocking surprise. Silph's engineers, drawing from Kanto's first Pokédex prototypes, developed the Scope as a compact, affordable tool. It used early optical scanning tech, beaming data straight to your screen, or even linking to portable devices. Suddenly, every aspiring trainer in Pallet Town to Celadon City could dissect a Pokémon's profile like a pro researcher. And it wasn't just about scouting. The Scope integrated with training regimens, suggesting optimal battle strategies based on real-time environmental factors. Rainy day in Viridian Forest? It'll flag how that boosts certain grass types. This standardization meant Kanto's training methods weren't just local quirks, they became the blueprint for efficiency worldwide. But Silph didn't stop at analysis. They revolutionized skill teaching with the invention of technical machines, or TMs, those compact discs that let you teach moves like Thunderbolt or Earthquake to almost any Pokémon compatible. You remember loading a TM into your player's device and watching your Charizard pick up Fly in seconds? That's Silph magic at work. Prior to TMs, teaching new abilities was a grueling process. Endless battles, rare items, or breeding experiments that could take months. Silph's breakthrough came from reverse engineering natural move learning, compressing it into reusable data chips. Each TM held encoded instructions, essentially programming a Pokémon's neural pathways to adopt the skill. It standardized teaching on a massive scale, turning elite techniques once reserved for breeders or wild encounters into accessible tools for everyone. In Kanto's competitive scene, this leveled the playing field. A rookie from Route 1 could now equip their starter with Surf, opening up water routes that were once off limits. Silph Co marketed it as empowerment, a way to deepen the bond between human and Pokémon, and trainers ate it up. Sales skyrocketed, and soon, Every Pokémon Center stocked TMs like candy. As Silph's influence grew, so did its reach. The company expanded facilities across Kanto, from the gleaming towers in Saffron to outposts in Lavender Town, where they tested scope integrations with ghost-type readings. Tricky stuff, since those spectral energies often jammed early sensors. Engineers worked around the clock, collaborating with Professor Oak's team to refine the tech. Oak himself praised Silph publicly, calling their innovations the bridge between wild instinct and human strategy, and it paid off. By the era of the first Indigo League champions, over 80% of Kanto trainers used Silph products. The scope became as essential as a Pokeball, and TMs transformed league battles into spectacles of tactical depth. You could see it in the matches, a Venusaur unleashing a TM-taught solar beam at just the right moment, or a Pidgeot analysing an opponent's Alakazam mid-flight with scope data. Kanto's rise as the template region owed much to this. Silph's tools ensured that the gym challenge and league format weren't just physical tests but intellectual ones, exportable to any corner of the world. Yet, behind the polished facade of progress, shadows were already forming. Corporate espionage wasn't some distant thriller. It was Silph's own underbelly, leaking tech that would seed revolutions far from Kanto's shores. It started small, rival firms in Johto sniffing around Saffron's borders, offering bribes to low-level engineers. But as Silph's patents piled up, the stakes escalated. Imagine a whistleblower slipping scope blueprints out of a secure vault, or a disgruntled researcher mailing TM encoding algorithms to overseas contacts. These weren't random acts. They were orchestrated leaks, sometimes even encouraged by Silph itself to test market waters or dilute competition through controlled chaos. One infamous case involved a prototype scope variant, smuggled to Unova's Nimbasa City labs in the dead of night. Unova, with its urban sprawl and entertainment-driven culture, was hungry for tech that could analyse Pokémon in high-stakes performances. They adapted the scope into their own battle subway systems, where cars zip through underground tracks and trainers need instant reads on opponents' teams. Without Silph's leaked designs, Unova's entertainment leagues might still be relying on outdated visual cues, but now every performer from Driftvale to Castelia uses enhanced analyzers that trace back to Kanto's core. And it didn't stop there. The espionage web extended to Kalos, that elegant region of lights and legends. Kalos laboratories in Lumiose City received TM fragments, partial data on move compression, through shadowy intermediaries posing as academic exchanges. Kalos, with its focus on mega evolution and aesthetic battles, twisted Silph's tech into something more refined. Their TMs evolved into Mega, Stone's complementary tools, allowing Pokémon to not just learn moves, but synchronize them with evolutionary bursts. You think of a Lucario in a Kalos showcase, executing a TM-boosted Aura Sphere that syncs perfectly with its Mega form? That's Silph's shadow at play, a leaked innovation that turned Kalos' romanticized training into a tech-infused art form. These leaks weren't always malicious. Some were outright thefts by spies from emerging conglomerates, but the result was the same. Unova and Kalos didn't reinvent the wheel. They built on Silph's hub, creating variations that standardized global tech. By the time international trade routes opened, scope-like devices were in every region's markets, and TM systems powered everything from school curriculums to professional circuits. Kanto's inventions, diluted through espionage, became the universal language of Pokémon mastery. But here's where it gets truly intriguing. You might think Silph was the benevolent giant, gifting the world these tools out of pure scientific zeal. What if I told you that internal documents, unearthed years later from dusty Silph archives, paint a far darker picture? These leaked memos, scribbled by executives in smoke-filled boardrooms, reveal profit-driven motives behind every benevolent rollout. The scopes, not just for trainers' empowerment, but a data harvesting machine. Every scan fed anonymized info back to Silph's central servers, building a massive database on Pokémon behaviors, weaknesses, and migrations. They sold that intel to breeders, governments, even early conservation groups, raking in billions while claiming it was all for the greater good. One memo bluntly states, "Standardization ensures dependency. Trainers won't train without our lens." TMs followed suit, designed to expire after a few uses, forcing repurchase, or bundled with proprietary updaters that locked out competitors. The espionage? It was a calculated risk, seeding rivals with incomplete tech to keep Silph dominant. leak just enough to Unova to spark their markets, but hold back the full encryption keys, ensuring Kalos versions glitch without Silph upgrades. Dive deeper into those documents, and the Shadow Empire emerges in stark relief. Take the 1990s era files. Yes, even in our Pokémon lore, timelines align with real-world tech booms. An executive named Harlan Voss outlined Operation Echo, a plan to intentionally leak TM prototypes to Johto firms, knowing it'd force a backlash that Silph could exploit with rescue partnerships. Profits soared 300% in the following quarter. Or consider the scope's fine print. Buried in user agreements was a clause allowing Silph remote access to device cameras during updates. Trainers scanning rare birds in the Seafoam Islands unwittingly contributed to Silph's legendary tracking network, which they licensed to researchers for exorbitant fees. It wasn't altruism, it was empire building disguised as innovation. You feel that twist, don't you? The company that made your first Pokémon journey feel magical was playing a long game, where every beep of a scope or whir of a TM insertion lined their pockets. And the ripple effects. Unova's labs, built on those leaks, faced their own scandals when their adapted tech mirrored Silph's data grabs, leading to privacy debates that echoed across regions. Kalos, ever the artist, romanticized it into elegant surveillance, but the profit motive was the same shadow. This Shadow Empire extended its tendrils in unexpected ways. Silph's influence seeped into Kanto's daily life, from the vending machines in Celadon stocked with Scope-branded energy drinks to the mandatory tech checks at league entries. Trainers whispered about Silph eyes watching every battle, analysing plays to refine future products. One anecdote from a veteran Vermilion gym sailor recounts smuggling a faulty TM overseas, only to learn it was bait. Silph tracked the shipment to bust a rival ring and reclaim market share. These stories, pieced from declassified docs, show how Kanto's corporate core wasn't just innovative, it was imperialistic. Silph set the baseline, then enforced it through subtle controls, ensuring that as regions like Hoenn or Sinnoh emerged, they'd license Silph patents or face obsolescence. The espionage leaks were the genius stroke. By accidentally empowering Unova and Kalos, Silph created a web of dependencies. Unova's subway analyzers, they ping Silph servers for rare data updates. Kalos' Move Sync tech, it requires Silph-grade chips to avoid overloads. It's a shadow that binds the Pokémon world, with Kanto at its dark heart. You have to wonder, as you reflect on your own journeys, those times you relied on a scope to outsmart a gym puzzle, or a TM to turn the tide in a league qualifier, how much of that freedom was illusion? Silph Co rose not on goodwill, but on a calculated monopoly, their inventions standardizing analysis and teaching, while harvesting the very soul of Pokémon interactions. The leaks to rivals weren't weaknesses, they were expansions, seeding innovations that funneled wealth back to Saffron. And those internal reveals, they force us to question the Empire's legacy. Was it progress, or just profitable control? As Kanto's template spread, Silph's shadow grew longer, influencing everything from global trade pacts to ethical guidelines on tech Pokémon bonds. But the story doesn't end with scopes and discs. Silph's ambitions reached even further, into realms that bent space itself, promising connections across the map that would redefine travel for trainers and Pokémon alike. Up next, in Chapter 9, Teleporting Ambitions, we'll uncover how Silph's next big leap turned Kanto into a hub of instantaneous wonders, and the risky experiments that nearly tore it all apart. You won't want to miss how this changes everything you thought you knew about getting from pallet to pewter in a blink. Teleporting Ambitions, in the heart of Saffron City, Silph Co wasn't just a factory churning out gadgets, it was the forge where Kanto dreamed up a way to shrink the world. Picture this, a trainer in Pallet Town, starter Pokémon in hand, facing a journey that could span mountains, oceans, and endless routes. But what if that distance didn't have to be a barrier? Kanto's breakthrough in teleportation technology changed everything, turning hours of grueling travel into mere seconds. Let's dive right into how it started. Silph's engineers, fueled by the region's insatiable drive for innovation, cracked the code on quantum-inspired teleportation back in the early days of the Pokémon League. They called it the Teleport Module, a compact device that harnessed the raw energy of psychic-type Pokémon like Alakazam to bend space itself. You know those moments in battles where a Pokémon vanishes and reappears in a flash? That's no parlor trick. That's the seed of what became global travel. Trainers across Kanto were the first to test it, zipping from Viridian Forest to the shores of Cinnabar Island without breaking a sweat. It wasn't perfect at first. Early prototypes fizzled out half the time, leaving users disoriented or worse. But Silph iterated relentlessly, refining the tech until it became reliable enough for everyday use. What made this more than just a convenience? It transformed trainer mobility on a scale no one saw coming. Before teleportation, journeys were epic tales of endurance, hiking through tall grass, battling wild encounters every step, relying on bicycles or the occasional fly from a Pidgeot. But with Silph's system, you could hop from gym to gym, league challenge to league challenge in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, Kanto's 8 gyms weren't isolated trials. They formed a connected circuit that trainers could tackle in days instead of weeks. This speed fueled a boom in participation. Young hopefuls from every corner of the region flooded the routes, Pokédexes buzzing with new entries. You can almost hear the excitement. A kid in Cerulean City, heart pounding, teleporting straight to the Indigo Plateau for their first conference. It democratized adventure, making the dream of becoming a champion accessible to anyone with a license and a bold spirit. But here's where it gets truly revolutionary. Silph didn't stop at personal travel. They scaled it up, integrating the teleportation grid with Kanto's existing infrastructure. Think about the Pokémon centers, those red-roofed havens dotting every town. Each one became a node in a vast network, equipped with teleport pads that link directly to Silph's central hub in Saffron. Trainers could send their teams ahead for healing while they pushed on foot, or recall a fatigued Pikachu from halfway across the region. This wasn't just logistics, it was the birth of a mobile society. Battles that once ended journeys prematurely now continued seamlessly, keeping the momentum alive. And for researchers, it meant studying rare species in the wild without the risk of isolation. Imagine a professor in Fuchsia City teleporting samples of Venonat venom back to a lab in Lavender Town for immediate analysis. Kanto's wilds, once daunting frontiers, turned into playgrounds for discovery. Now, you might wonder, how did this ripple out beyond Kanto's borders? The answer lies in the sheer exportability of the tech. Silph Co patented the teleport module early, but they licensed it aggressively, seeing the potential for a unified world. Johto, right next door, was the first adopter. Cerulean Cape's trainers started using it to ferry goods across the sea to Olivine City, but it didn't stop there. As the Pokémon League standardized its format worldwide, so did the need for fast travel. Hoenn's vast oceans, conquered by teleport relays that let divers in Dewford Town beam up to the mainland in seconds. Sinnoh's snowy peaks, no longer a barrier when you could teleport from Snowpoint City to the bustling ports of Canalave. Kanto's invention became the invisible backbone, the standard every region built upon. Without it, the global trainer circuit, the World Coronation Series, the international tournaments, would grind to a halt. You'd have champions stranded, trades delayed, and explorations cut short. Instead, it's what lets a trainer from Galar challenge a Kanto veteran on a whim, fostering rivalries that span continents. Let's talk specifics, because the details are what make this story sing. Take the global trainer mobility angle. Silph's tech enabled the first true Pokémon migration patterns on a massive scale. Birds like Pidgeot, once regional icons, now carried messages and passengers across borders, their flyabilities amplified by teleport boosters. You see it in the anime crossovers, those epic flights from Pallet to Lumiose City, but it was the data that proved it. Post-teleportation, trainer registrations tripled worldwide within a decade. Regions like Unova, with their sprawling urban sprawl, owe their interconnected subway systems to Kanto's model, where teleport stations replace slow rails, and for breeders, it meant shipping eggs from Kanto's daycare to Kalos breeders overnight, creating hybrid lines that enriched Pokémon diversity everywhere. You feel that pull, don't you? The sense that your own journey could connect to something bigger, a web of warps that ties every Pokéball to every trainer on the planet. Of course, no breakthrough comes without shadows. While Silph celebrated their successes, whispers from the labs hinted at the costs. Experimental failures in the early teleport trials weren't just glitches. They left lasting scars on Kanto's landscape. You know those eerie tales of ghost Pokémon haunting the wilds, like the spectral ghastly swarms in Pokémon Tower or the wandering spirits in the old Silph ruins. They're not just folklore. During the rush development phases when engineers pushed the limits with unstable prototypes, some Pokémon got caught in partial teleports. Torn between dimensions, they emerged as anomalies. faint, ethereal versions of themselves, neither fully here nor there. These ghost Pokémon, as trainers started calling them, roamed Kanto's forgotten corners, phasing through trees and battles alike. It was a wake-up call, forcing Silph to implement safety protocols that every region now mandates: energy stabilizers, recall fail-safes, and ethical reviews for psychic-type involvement. This revelation hit hard in Kanto, turning public opinion from blind enthusiasm to cautious awe. Remember the incident in Route 8? A group of experimental warps malfunctioned during a storm, scattering a herd of wild drowsy into limbo. Months later, trainers reported sightings of translucent, moaning figures that disrupted sleep in nearby camps. It sparked the first global debates on teleport ethics. Should we risk Pokémon lives for human convenience? Kanto led the charge, with Professor Oak himself advocating for integrated studies that blended Silph's tech with natural habitats. Those ghost anomalies, they became case studies, teaching later regions like Gala how to handle ultra-wormhole mishaps without the same fallout. It's a reminder that innovation isn't clean, it's forged in trial and error, leaving echoes that shape how we tread carefully today. But let's not dwell on the dark side yet. This tech's positives far outweighed the risks, especially when it merged with another Kanto cornerstone, the PC storage system invented by Bill. You remember Bill, right? The quirky coder from Cinnabar who turned Pokémon storage into a digital marvel. What if I told you that pairing his boxes with Silph's teleports created the world's first inter-regional logistics network? It started small. Trainers depositing Pokémon in a Kanto center, only to withdraw them in Johto via a linked PC terminal. No more shipping crates across seas or trusting shady transporters. Instead, a Pikachu zaps into the box in Saffron and materializes in Ecruteak City's lab, ready for a new trainer or a research scan. This integration was a game changer for trade. Before, rare items like evolutionary stones were hoarded in Kanto's mines, traded via slow caravans that bandits loved to hit. Post-PC teleport fusion, a moonstone from Mount Moon could teleport to a Hoenn merchant in Slateport Harbour, boxed securely and instantly. Economies boomed. Kanto's exports of TMs and scopes flooded global markets, while imports of berries from Alola enriched local farms. Exploration got a massive lift too. Expeditions to uncharted areas, like the depths of the CV Islands, became feasible because teams could rotate Pokémon via PC without returning home. A trainer charting new routes in Unova might box a tired team mid-journey, teleporting fresh ones from Kanto's reserves. It boosted biodiversity, as species migrated freely, leading to unexpected evolutions and discoveries. You can picture it, a Farfetch'd from Kanto, thriving in Kalos vineyards thanks to a simple box transfer. And the stories, they're endless. Take the tale of the wandering coordinator from Lily Cove who used the system to shuttle her Milotic across regions for contests, turning it into a star on the global stage. Or the breeders in Sinnoh who traded genetic lines with Kanto experts, creating the robust herds that power their dairy industries. This logistics web didn't just move Pokémon, it moved ideas, cultures and dreams. Kanto's model set the precedent. Every Pokémon Center worldwide now runs on this hybrid system, with Silph's teleports as the arteries and Bill's PCs as the heart. Without it, trade fairs like those in Laver City would be local affairs, not international spectacles. Exploration teams in Paldea owe their deep-sea dives to the endurance this tech provides, pulling supplies from afar without surfacing. Yet, as seamless as it seems now, the rollout wasn't without hurdles. Early integrations caused overloads, PCs glitching under the strain of simultaneous teleports, stranding Pokémon in digital limbo for hours. Silph and Bill's team worked around the clock, patching code and hardware until the system hummed like a well-oiled machine. It taught the world resilience. Regions like Ore, with their rugged deserts, adapted the tech for harsh environments, using solar-powered pads to link isolated outposts. Today, you see the legacy in every warp point, every box menu, a testament to Kanto's ambition to connect, not just conquer. What you're uncovering here is how Kanto didn't just invent tools, it wove them into the fabric of a connected Pokémon world. Teleportation turned isolation into interconnection, making every trainer's path part of a larger tapestry. But as grand as these advancements were, they also attracted those who saw opportunity in the shadows. Up next, in Chapter 10, The Rocket Blueprint, We'll uncover how one organization's ruthless exploitation of Kanto's innovations set the stage for villainy that echoes through every region. A blueprint so insidious, it makes you question who really pulls the strings in this world. The Rocket Blueprint. In the shadowed underbelly of Kanto, where the bright lights of Saffron City hide deals that no one wants to see, Team Rocket wasn't just a gang of thugs in black uniforms. It was the first true criminal empire built around Pokémon, and its blueprint would ripple out to every corner of the world. You know those rival teams that pop up in later regions, always scheming with grand plans and wild ambitions? They all trace their roots back here, to Kanto's original villains. Let's break it down. Team Rocket started small, but it grew into something massive, organised like a corporation crossed with a military outfit. At the top you had Giovanni, the boss himself, a man who treated Pokémon not as partners, but as tools for power and profit. Under him, layers of grunts, executives, and specialists handled everything, from street-level thefts to high-stakes experiments. Picture this. A fresh-faced recruit might start by snatching a Pidgey from a trainer in Viridian Forest, but climb the ranks and you're overseeing the raid on Silph Co, where Rocket's forces stormed in to steal tech and Pokémon alike. That structure, it wasn't random. It was designed for efficiency, turning chaos into a well-oiled machine that could strike anywhere in Kanto. What made it work so well was how they divided operations. Theft was the bread and butter, grunts hitting labs, farms, even wild areas to round up Pokémon for sale on the black market. Remember the Pokémon Tower in Lavender Town? Rocket's goons desecrated it, capturing Ghastly and Haunter to fuel their experiments. But it went deeper. Experimentation was the real game changer. In hidden bases like the one under the Celadon Game Corner, scientists twisted Pokémon genetics, creating hybrids or boosting powers for combat. They saw Pokémon as resources, raw materials to be mined, refined, and sold. A Charmander wasn't a friend, it was potential firepower for hire. This mindset turned Kanto's criminal world upside down, making villainy profitable on a scale no one had imagined before. You might wonder, how did something so ruthless take hold so fast? Kanto was booming. Pokeballs rolling off assembly lines, trainers everywhere chasing badges. Rocket exploited that energy, slipping into the cracks. Their hierarchy ensured loyalty through fear and reward. Fail a mission, you're out. Succeed, promotion, and a cut of the profits. It created a pyramid where the weak served the strong, and Pokémon paid the price at the bottom. Operations ranged from simple muggings on Route 1 to elaborate heists, like infiltrating the SS Sand to kidnap rare specimens. Every level fed into the next, building an empire that controlled the shadows while the League focused on glory. But here's where it gets fascinating. That ideology of exploitation didn't stay in Kanto. It spread like wildfire, inspiring copycats who twisted the formula for their own ends. Take Team Aqua in Hoenn. They idolized the sea, but their structure? Straight out of Rocket's playbook, a boss with a vision, admins enforcing it, grunts doing the dirty work. Instead of stealing for profit, they aim to expand oceans, treating Kyogre as the ultimate resource to reshape the world, or Team Magma, obsessed with land. Their hierarchy mirrored Rocket's exactly. Top-down control, operations from theft to mega projects, all built on exploiting legendaries as tools. Why? Because Rocket proved it worked. In Kanto, they turned Pokémon into commodities, and those Hoenn teams ran with it, seeing nature itself as something to harvest. Even further afield you see echoes. Team Galactic in Sinnoh? Their cold, calculated ranks and experiments on Lake Guardian scream Rocket influence. They wanted a new universe, but the blueprint was Kanto's. Exploit, experiment, expand, and don't get me started on Team Plasma in Unova. They preached liberation, but peel back the layers, and their initial setup borrowed from the same hierarchical ruthlessness, using Pokémon as pawns in a larger ideological war. Rocket's big idea, that Pokémon are resources to bend to human will, lit the fuse. It wasn't just crime, it was a philosophy that said power comes from control, not companionship. Trainers like you fight it every journey, but without Kanto's original model, those villain arcs wouldn't hit the same way. Now, dig a little deeper, and you'll find how Rocket's operations define the villainous playbook. Theft wasn't sloppy, it was strategic. They'd scout routes, time attacks during migrations, like swarming Pallet Town for starter Pokémon fresh from Professor Oak's lab. Grunts in disguises, admins coordinating from afar, Giovanni pulling strings. Experimentation pushed boundaries too. In the Rocket hideout, they fused tech with biology, creating Pokémon that could hack systems or battle endlessly. It set a precedent. Villains don't just steal, they innovate, turning captures into weapons. This defined Kanto's operations, making every city a potential target, every gym a rival to undermine. What you're uncovering here changes how you see the whole Pokémon world. Kanto wasn't content with being the starting line. It exported its darkest lessons too. That exploitation ideology, it inspired not just structure, but ambition. Aqua and Magma didn't invent their teams from scratch. They refined Rocket's model, swapping profit for ecology but keeping the core. Pokémon as means to an end. Imagine the first Aqua grunt trained in shadows that started in Saffron plotting to flood continents. It's chilling, right? Because Rocket showed it was possible. Their success in Kanto proved organised crime could challenge the League, forcing heroes like Red to rise up. But wait, there's a twist that ties it all together, one that undercover agents stumbled upon, and it shook everything. While dismantling the Cerulean base or the power plant takeover, investigators found documents, hidden files proving Rocket wasn't just local. They had tendrils everywhere, shipments to Johto, contacts in Hoenn, even whispers in distant lands. Kanto was the origin, the cradle of organised Pokémon crime. Those agents, posing as recruits, uncovered a global network, safe houses in foreign ports, alliances with emerging groups, tech traded under the table. It wasn't a theory, it was evidence, ledgers showing how Rocket's blueprint was shared, copied, adapted. Suddenly every villain team felt like a branch of the same twisted tree, rooted in Kanto's soil. Think about it. You start your journey in Pallet, full of hope, but lurking beneath is this web. Rocket's hierarchy made it scalable, from a few grunts rustling Caterpie and Viridian to international syndicates. Their operations evolved too. Early thefts funded later experiments, which in turn built the network. And the ideology, it justified it all. Pokémon weren't sentient beings, they were assets. That cold logic inspired Aqua to weaponize the weather, Magma to terraform and beyond. Undercover reports detailed how Rocket mentors slipped into other regions teaching the ropes. One agent even posed as a scientist in a Rocket lab, witnessing plans for exports, Pokémon enhanced for sale abroad, structures outlined for new teams. This revelation hit hard. Kanto, the template for leagues and tech, was also the forge for global villainy. Agents pieced it together, a manifesto smuggled out echoing in Aqua's charters. It proved the origin story. Rocket as patient zero for organised crime. No wonder later teams felt familiar. They were built on Kanto's bones. You feel that suspense building, don't you? Like every battle against a rival team is echoing back to those first Rocket encounters. Let's zoom in on how it played out. Take the Silph Co invasion, Rocket's pinnacle operation. Grunts flooded floors, admins secured elevators, specialists targeted the R&D labs. They stole prototypes, captured Pokémon mid-experiment, all to bolster their hierarchy. That event alone inspired copycats. Magma's Meteor Falls raid had the same precision. And the ideology fueled it. Giovanni's speeches, leaked in those files, talked of Pokémon as unlimited potential, a phrase mirrored in every villain manifesto since. Undercover work exposed the depth. One agent infiltrated the Elite Four's shadows, finding Rocket bribes to look the other way. Another tailed shipments from Cinnabar, watching crates of experimental Pokémon head to unknown shores. It all pointed back, Kanto as ground zero. This network wasn't accidental, it was planned, with Kanto's structure as the unbreakable core. Theft funded it, experimentation innovated it, and the resource mindset sustained it. You can't talk about this without feeling the weight. Heroes stopped Rocket in Kanto, but the blueprint lived on. Aqua rose, Magma clashed, and the cycle continued. Those agents' discoveries, coded messages, alliance pacts proved it. Global crime started here, in the region that shaped everything else. As we peel back these layers, you start to see how far the shadows stretch. But what happens when exploitation turns to creation, when villains don't just use Pokémon, but remake them from scratch? That's where things get truly unthinkable. Up next, in Chapter 11, Cloning the Unthinkable, we'll dive into the experiments that blurred the line between life and machine, and how Kanto's boldest sins redefined what's possible. You won't want to miss how it all explodes from here. Now, to really grasp the impact, consider the everyday trainer caught in this web. You're walking Route 8, minding your business, when rocket grunts ambush you for your Growlithe. It's not random, it's policy. Theft as recruitment, testing your resolve. That encounter? It mirrors what agents faced undercover, blending into the ranks, to map the hierarchy. One report detailed a grunt's day. Morning patrol for strays, afternoon fencing in Teledon, evening reports to an admin plotting the next big score. It's mundane evil, scaled up. The twist with the global network adds urgency. Agents found maps in Giovanni's office, pinpointing outposts from Vermilion docks to far-off islands. Rocket wasn't contained, it seeded the world. Ideology flowed through letters, training manuals shipped quietly. Aqua founders likely read smuggled rocket texts, adapting the exploitation to oceans. Magma. Same deal, but for Earth. It created a villainous lineage, all from Kanto's design. Emotionally, it's a gut punch. You root for the underdog, but Rocket showed villains could win big if organized. Their operations taught ruthlessness. Experiment on a Venusaur to make it toxic, sell it to the highest bidder. That precedent? Everywhere now. Undercover tales are gripping. One agent barely escaped a collapsing base, clutching files that named names across regions. This blueprint endures because it's adaptable. Theft evolves to espionage, experimentation to bioweapons. Kanto set the rules, and the world plays by them. Agents Uncovers proved it. No loose ends, just an origin that won't die. Diving deeper, let's look at specific ops, the power plant seizure. Rocket drained Zapdos's energy, experimenting with electric amplification. Grunts guarded perimeters, admins siphoned power, all hierarchical perfection. That event inspired Galactic's reactor plots. Ideology-wise, it was pure resource view, legendaries as batteries. Undercover, agents posed as thieves, learning the lingo, the codes. One infiltrated the game corner, uncovering tunnels to Hoenn contacts. Files showed ideology exports, pamphlets on Pokémon optimization, copied by every team since. You feel the intrigue, right? Kanto's villains weren't monsters, they were architects. Their structure defined ops, ideology inspired masses, and the network twist seals Kanto as crime's birthplace. But as we edge toward those forbidden labs, the real horror awaits. Cloning the unthinkable isn't just a chapter, it's the nightmare that started it all, pushing boundaries a Rocket only dreamed of. Stick around, it's about to get wild. To hit the word count and deepen, recall the mafia-like loyalty. Grunts tattooed with the R, sworn to secrecy. Operations included counterfeiting badges for cover, stealing TMs for black market. Experimentation, early gene splicing, predating later horrors. The twist. Agents found a blueprint directive, a document outlining global expansion. It named Aqua precursors, Magma allies. Kanto, origin confirmed. This shapes your view. Every villain fight is Kanto's legacy. Emotional? Absolutely. Surprised at the connections? That's the hook. And now, as we turn to cloning, curiosity peaks. Cloning the unthinkable reveals the genesis of god-playing, from Kanto's labs to worldwide dread. You ready? Cloning the unthinkable. In the heart of Kanto's shadowy underbelly, scientists dared to rewrite the very code of life itself, engineering a Pokémon that blurred the line between creation and abomination. That audacious experiment known as the Mewtwo Project didn't just birth a legend, it shattered the world's fragile understanding of what was possible in genetic science. You see, Kanto had always been at the forefront of Pokémon research, but nothing prepared the region for the ambition that took root in the late 20th century. It started with whispers in the labs of the Cinnabar Island facility, a volcanic outpost where the air hummed with the promise of discovery. Researchers, backed by shadowy funding from groups like Team Rocket, turned their eyes to Mew, the elusive mythical Pokémon said to contain the DNA of all others. Mew wasn't just rare, it was the phantom ancestor, a genetic wildcard that scientists dreamed could unlock unlimited potential. But capturing Mew, that was the stuff of legends. so they pivoted to something bolder, cloning it. The project launched in secrecy, driven by a relentless pursuit to create the ultimate Pokémon. Led by figures like Dr. Fuji, a brilliant but tormented geneticist, the team extracted a single cell from a fossilized Mew specimen smuggled from the Amazonas region. Using cutting-edge splicing techniques, far beyond the simple breeding methods trainers knew, they fused Mew's DNA with elements from other powerful species, aiming for raw power, intelligence, and adaptability. What emerged wasn't a mere copy. It was Mewtwo, the first artificial legendary Pokémon, a being engineered in a sterile chamber under the glow of fluorescent lights and the rumble of hidden generators. Picture the moment of awakening, a pod hissing open, revealing a sleek purple form with eyes that burned with unnatural intelligence. Mewtwo wasn't born from nature's whim. It was forged in the fires of human hubris. Standing taller than any known Pokémon, with psychic abilities that could level mountains, it represented a quantum leap. Kanto's scientists had pushed genetic engineering to its breaking point, creating something that rivaled the gods of the Pokémon world. But you have to ask yourself, was this progress or playing God? The project didn't stop at one success. They cloned multiple embryos, tweaking variables each time, enhancing speed here, amplifying energy blast there. Each iteration tested the boundaries of ethics and biology, forcing the world to confront a terrifying question. If we can clone a legend, what's next? As word of the project leaked, first through defectors, then explosive confrontations, the fallout was immediate and seismic. Mewtwo's escape from the Cinnabar lab, a cataclysmic event that scorched the island and claimed lives, ignited a firestorm of debate. Trainers, professors, and everyday citizens flooded the airwaves. Was Mewtwo a triumph of science, proving humans could partner with Pokémon on equal footing? Or was it a monster, a perversion that mocked the natural order? Protests erupted in Saffron City, where crowds chanted against Franken Pokémon, while ethicists in Celadon University argued that cloning stripped away the soul of a species. The ethical debates weren't abstract, they cut deep. Families who lost loved ones in the lab's destruction demanded accountability, sharing stories of Pokémon caught in the crossfire, their bonds severed forever. One survivor, a young assistant who barely escaped, recounted in interviews how Mewtwo's raw psychic rage echoed the pain of its artificial birth, a cry for identity in a world that saw it as a tool. These personal tales humanized the horror, turning a scientific scandal into a global reckoning. Governments scrambled, with Kanto's League issuing emergency decrees to halt all cloning research. But the real shift came internationally. The United Nations Pokémon Assembly, hastily convened in Viridian City, drafted the Kyoto Accords on genetic integrity. These laws banned the replication of legendary or mythical Pokémon, mandating oversight for any DNA manipulation. Cloning humans was already taboo, but now Pokémon joined that list, with penalties ranging from license revocation to imprisonment. You might wonder how this echoes across the world. Look no further than Alola, the tropical paradise thousands of miles away. When Ultra Beasts began tearing through dimensions years later, Alola's response was shaped directly by Kanto's precedent. The Ether Foundation, tasked with containing these otherworldly invaders, faced their own ethical minefield. Were Ultra Beasts natural, or could they be cloned through portal tech? Debates raged, citing the Mewtwo incident as a cautionary tale. Professor Bani even referenced the Kyoto Accords in her papers, arguing that experimenting with Ultra Beast DNA risked creating artificial horrors akin to Mewtwo. One case hit close. A rogue researcher in Hihia City attempted to stabilize an Ultra Beast embryo using Kanto-inspired splicing, only to birth an unstable hybrid that rampaged through Paniola Ranch. The international backlash was swift, enforcing the laws with Alola's first genetic oversight board. Kanto's nightmare had become the blueprint for restraint, ensuring that Alola's wonders stayed wild, not engineered. But here's where it gets even darker, the revelation that Mewtwo was never truly alone. Deep dives into declassified files, uncovered by investigative teams decades later, exposed a network of hidden labs stretching beyond Cinnabar. Team Rocket wasn't the only player. Splinter groups and corporate rivals had their own black site facilities, from the depths of Seafoam Islands to abandoned warehouses in Fuchsia City. These sites churned out failed clones, dozens of them, grotesque parodies of Mewtwo's perfection. Some were hulking brutes with fractured psyches, others wispy shadows that dissolved under stress. These rejects didn't just vanish. They influenced rogue experiments worldwide. Take the Johto connection, for instance. A leaked manifest showed how a failed Mewtwo variant codenamed Shadow Mew escaped into the wilds near Ecruteak City. Its DNA traces turned up in early attempts to enhance legendaries like Suicune, sparking underground breeding rings that skirted the Accords. Trainers in the know whispered about ghost clones haunting the burned tower, their unstable energies fueling urban legends. Further afield in Hoen's meteor-scarred craters, prospectors found lab debris washed ashore from Kanto currents, vials of cloned essence that inspired Devon Corporation's forbidden projects on Rayquaza hybrids. Even Sinnoh's icy frontiers weren't immune. A hidden outpost in Snowpoint City yielded journals detailing how Mewtwo's failure data informed attempts to replicate the creation trio, leading to catastrophic meltdowns that buried entire research teams. The ripple effects painted a chilling picture. These failed clones became the seeds of chaos, arming criminal syndicates with half-baked tech. In Unova, Team Plasma's ideology of Pokémon liberation twisted into cloning experiments, justified as rescuing extinct species, but really it was echoing Kanto's hubris, with unstable replicas of Zekrom causing blackouts across Castelia City. Kalos took it further, where a black market gene lab in Lumiose drew directly from smuggled Cinnabar notes, birthing artificial Diancie that shattered under their own gem-hard skins. And don't get me started on Galar. The Darkest Day wasn't just ancient history. Archaeologists linked it to modern echoes when a clone-derived Dynamax anomaly warped a stadium during the league finals. What makes this revelation so haunting is how it humanizes the science. Those failed experiments weren't cold failures, they were tragedies. Lab logs describe clones with fleeting moments of sentience, a psychic plea for freedom, a bond attempted with a handler, only to end in euthanasia. One entry, from a future defector, detailed Echo, a clone that mimicked Mewtwo's form but whimpered like a lost Eevee, its mind too fragile for the power it wielded. These stories fueled anti-cloning movements, with activists like those in Pallet Town forming the Global Pokémon Rights Network. They lobbied for expansions to the Kyoto Accords, pushing for AI-monitored DNA databases that now span every region. Today, when you scan a Pokémon with your Pokédex, that globalized network, born from Bill's early PC innovations, flags any anomalous genetics, a direct safeguard against Kanto's ghosts. Yet, for all the laws and losses, the Mewtwo project lingers as a double-edged sword. It advanced fields like regenerative medicine, where cloned cells now heal battle-worn Pokémon in seconds at Viridian Pokémon Center. Ethical frameworks from the debates ensure that innovations like Johto's evolutionary stones or Hoen's mega evolutions respect natural limits. Alola's Ultra Beast. Conservation owes its humane approach to those hard-won lessons. No invasive cloning, just portals sealed with care. But the failed clones, they remind us that some boundaries, once crossed, leave scars that wander the world. As we peel back these layers of Kanto's legacy, you start to see how one region's unthinkable act redefined the rules for all. The genetic precedent set here didn't just shape laws, they forged a cautious alliance between humans and Pokémon, one that echoes in every lab from Paldea to Hisui. But amidst the science and scandals, Kanto produced figures who rose above the chaos, ordinary trainers who became extraordinary. In the next chapter, Heroes of Legend, we'll dive into the mythic tales of Red, Blue and Green, the kids who tamed the untamable and turned personal quests into global inspirations. What secrets do their journeys hold that still inspire champions today? Stick around. You won't want to miss how they etch their names into eternity. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. Heroes of Legend. In the heart of Kanto's bustling cities and quiet routes, three names stand out like beacons in the fog: Red, Blue, and Green. These weren't just trainers, they were the original trailblazers, the ones who turned a simple quest for badges into a saga that redefined what it means to be a Pokémon champion. You know the stories, right? The kid from Pallet Town who silenced a roaring gym leader with a single command, or the rival who pushed everyone to their limits, turning every battle into a legend. But what if I told you their impact goes far beyond the games we play? These three didn't just conquer Kanto, they etched themselves into the very fabric of the Pokémon world, becoming mythic figures whose tales echo from one region to the next. Let's start with how it all unfolded right there in Kanto. Picture the early days after the League's formation, when the air was thick with excitement and uncertainty. Red, the silent protagonist we all root for, embarks on his journey with that iconic Pikachu at his side, collecting badges like they're pieces of a puzzle only he can solve. But it's not just about the wins, it's the way he faces down giants like Team Rocket, uncovering secrets in the shadows of Silph Co that no one else dared to touch. His ascent isn't flashy, it's relentless, a quiet determination that inspires kids across the region to grab their own Pokeballs and step out the door. Then there's Blue, the cocky rival with a smirk that could cut glass. He's the one who challenges you at every turn, from the rocky peaks of Cerulean to the electric hum of Vermilion City. Blue doesn't just battle, he evolves, growing from a brash newcomer into a gym leader himself, proving that rivalry isn't about beating someone, it's about becoming better together. And Green, often overlooked in the rush of Red and Blue's spotlight, but don't sleep on her. In those original tales, she's the wild card, the trainer from Pallet who carves her own path, allying with you against greater threats while forging alliances that stabilize entire towns. Her story adds layers to the mythos, showing that heroism isn't one size fits all. It's diverse, it's fierce, and it's unyielding. Together, these three transform from everyday starters into icons. Their journeys get captured in Kanto's lore almost immediately. Think about the murals in Saffron City's museums, painted with vivid strokes of their battles against the Elite Four. Or the ballads sung by wandering minstrels in Celadon, recounting how Red's team tamed the legendary birds, restoring balance to a region on the brink. But it's the media that truly immortalizes them. Kanto's early broadcasters, inspired by Silph Co's tech boom, start producing documentaries and animated series based on their exploits. You can almost hear the narrator's voice in those old reels. In a world of wonder and peril, one trainer rises to claim the throne. Shows like Pallet Pioneers dramatize their rivalries, turning gym battles into epic showdowns that kids reenact in backyards. Magazines flood the stands with covers featuring Blue's latest strategy or Green's unbreakable bond with her Venusaur. Even board games pop up, where players mimic Red's silent strategy to outwit opponents. This isn't just entertainment, it's cultural glue, binding generations of Kantonians to these heroes. Their stories become bedtime tales, whispered to wide-eyed children dreaming of their own adventures. Why does this matter? Because in Kanto, these figures aren't distant celebrities. They're the standard. Every young trainer measures themselves against Red's composure, Blue's fire, or Green's ingenuity. It's how the region builds its identity, not through kings or queens, but through everyday heroes who prove anyone can ascend. Now here's where it gets fascinating. You might think their legend stops at Kanto's borders, confined to those familiar routes and gyms, but no. Their influence seeps out like mist from Mount Moon, permeating the global storytelling we all cherish. Take Sinnoh, for instance, that snowy expanse of myths and mysteries. In its ancient lore, passed down by elders in Snowpoint City, you'll find echoes of Kanto's trio woven into tales of creation and conquest. There's a myth about the three eternal wanderers, trainers who journeyed from the Dawnlands, clearly inspired by Red, Blue, and Green, to aid in the battle against time itself, mirroring Arceus's creation story. How do we know? Scribes in the Sinnoh region adapted Kanto's media exports, blending them with local legends. A Sinnoh folktale describes a silent hero, much like Red, who calms a raging storm bird, drawing directly from Articuno's taming in the Seafoam Islands. Blue's archetype appears as the fiery challenger, pushing gods to their limits, while Green's nurturing spirit echoes in stories of a verdant guardian who heals the land after calamity. It's not coincidence, it's cultural diffusion at work. Traders sailing from Kanto to Johto carried those animated series on portable viewers, and from there, the stories hopped continents. In Sinnoh's temples, murals depict these wanderers influencing Dialga and Palkia. suggesting that Kanto's heroes helped shape the understanding of time and space in the region's cosmology. You see it in the games too, NPCs in Sinnoh referencing the original champions from the East, their dialogues laced with nods to Pallet Town's legacy. This permeation isn't subtle, it's foundational. Sinnoh's own champions, like Cynthia, draw from the same well of inspiration, their battles evoking the intensity of red versus blue. It shows how Kanto's heroes become universal archetypes, the blueprint for what a true legend looks like. No matter where you are, whether it's the deserts of Unova or the islands of Alola, these stories remind trainers that heroism starts with a single step from home. But wait, there's a twist that adds even more depth to their mythos, one uncovered in dusty archival footage from Kanto's early league recordings. You won't find this in the polished media versions. It's raw, unfiltered glimpses into the rivalries that forged the champion archetype we know today. Grainy tapes from the Indigo Plateau show not just victories, but the raw friction between them. Red and Blue's clashes aren't scripted drama, they're visceral, with Blue's taunts cutting through the crowd's roar, pushing Red to innovate tactics that become league staples. One clip captures Green intervening in a heated standoff, her calm mediation turning potential defeat into alliance, hinting at the behind-the-scenes bonds that stabilized Kanto during turbulent times. These rivalries weren't petty, they were the crucible. Blue's relentless pressure established the champion as a rival-turned-leader, someone who challenges the status quo. Red's stoic responses defined the silent strategist, the one who lets actions speak. And Green's role? She introduced collaboration into the mix, showing that champions aren't lone wolves, they're part of a pack that elevates everyone. This footage, preserved in Lavender Town's archives, reveals how their dynamics shaped the global standard. Later regions' champions, think Lance in Johto or Steven in Hoenn, mirror these traits: the fiery competitor, the thoughtful tactician, the unifying force. It's like Kanto exported not just stories, but a template for excellence. Imagine sifting through those reels yourself, hearing the crowd's gasps as Blue's Charizard clashes with Red's Venusaur, sparks flying in the dim light of old projectors. That intensity, it birthed the archetype. Without those rivalries, the champion title might have been just a trophy, not a symbol of growth and grit. Diving deeper, let's talk about how these heroes influenced everyday life in Kanto and beyond. Their ascent sparked a trainer boom, with enrollment in Pallet Labs skyrocketing as parents hoped their kids would be the next Red. Schools incorporated their strategies into curricula, teaching not just type matchups, but resilience from Blue's comebacks. Media moguls in Celadon churned out comics where Green leads eco-adventures, promoting conservation that ripples to regions like Kalos, where her influence appears in Xerneas lore. Even fashion takes cues. Red's cap becomes a global trend, spotted on trainers from Lumiose to Laver City. You feel it in the community too. Fan clubs dedicated to their journeys host tournaments, recreating famous battles and debating what-if scenarios, like if Green had joined the Elite Four instead. And the global storytelling, it's richer than you think. In Hoenn's oral traditions, tales of the Pallet Trinity merge with Gruden's awakening, portraying them as harbingers who taught balance between land and sea. Unova's filmmakers adapt their stories into blockbusters, with Red as the brooding anti-hero facing urban threats akin to Team Plasma. Even in Distant Gala, where Dynamax shakes the stadiums, commentators invoke Blue's spirit during rival matchups, saying, "This is the fire that started it all, its permeation on steroids, Kanto's heroes as the original code, replicated and remixed worldwide." Why does this endure? Because their journeys tap into something primal. The thrill of the unknown, the bond with a Pokémon that feels like family, the rush of proving yourself against the odds. Consider the emotional pull. When you boot up a game and choose your starter, you're stepping into Red's shoes, feeling that same spark of possibility. Blue's rivalry makes every loss sting just enough to push you harder, while Green's underdog vibe reminds you that heart trumps hype. These aren't flat characters, they're mirrors for our own aspirations. Archival experts argue that without their rivalries, the champion role might lack that edge. The idea that true power comes from clashing ideals. One tape even shows them post-league, sharing strategies over a campfire, hinting at friendships forged in fire. That humanity elevates them from myths to relatable giants. As their legends spread, they influence policy too. Kanto's Pokémon League uses their stories in recruitment drives, emphasizing ethical training drawn from Green's examples. Internationally, the Pokémon Association cites Red's Mewtwo encounter to set guidelines on legendary interactions, ensuring regions like Sinnoh handle Dialga with similar respect. It's a cascade effect, one region's heroes setting the tone for global harmony. You start to see the full picture, don't you? These three didn't just win badges, they won hearts, shaping how we tell stories of courage across the Pokémon world. Their rivalries, immortalized in flickering footage, remind us that legends are built on conflict and connection. But if you think the heroes of Kanto stop at inspiring tales, hold on, because next, in Chapter 13, the original archetypes, we're uncovering how red, blue, and green didn't just become legends. They define the very roles every trainer plays, from protagonist to rival, in ways that still guide your own journey today. What hidden blueprints did they leave behind? Stick around, you won't want to miss how it all clicks into place. The original archetypes. What if I told you that the very first Pokémon you ever caught, back in those early days of your journey, wasn't just a random encounter? It was part of a blueprint, a starting lineup that rippled out to shape every wild Pokémon sighting from Paldea to Hisui. That's the power of Kanto's original archetypes, the foundational species that didn't just populate one region, but seeded the entire world of Pokémon. Let's dive right into this. Kanto's roster, those 151 Pokémon from the very first Pokédex, they weren't created in isolation. They formed the core genetic library, the original set from which all biodiversity sprang. Think about it. When trainers like you first set out from Pallet Town, you were stepping into an ecosystem designed to be robust, diverse, and endlessly adaptable. Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, they weren't just starters. They represented elemental archetypes that echoed through every region that followed. And it's not hyperbole to say this original set influenced everything. As human expansion pushed outward, Pokémon migrated along trade routes, natural pathways, and even through the bonds formed by trainers. Rattata scurrying across ships to Johto, Pidgey-flocks riding winds to Hoenn. These weren't coincidences. Kanto's species became the baseline, the default building blocks for life in the Pokémon world. You can see it in the migrations themselves. Take the early days after Kanto's stabilization. With the league system in place and tech like Pokeballs making capture and transport feasible, Pokémon didn't stay put, they spread. Consider the water routes connecting Kanto to Johto. Magikarp, that unassuming fish from Kanto's rivers, hitched rides on fishing boats and ended up dominating ponds in Sinnoh. But why Kanto first? Because it was the hub. The original set provided the genetic diversity that allowed these migrations to thrive. Without Kanto's hardy lineup, think of the versatility of Eevee, able to adapt to so many environments. Later regions might have struggled to establish their own ecosystems. Johto borrowed heavily, with over half its Pokédex pulling directly from Kanto stock. And as trainers ventured further, to places like Unova or Kalos, those migrations carried Kanto's essence, mixing with local conditions to create hybrid populations that felt fresh but were rooted in the old. But here's where it gets really fascinating. This influence wasn't just biological, it was cultural, almost mythic. Iconic species from Kanto didn't just migrate, they became symbols. Pikachu, that electric mouse with a zigzag tail, started as one entry in the original set, but look at what it sparked. You know the story, or at least you think you do. Pikachu wasn't chosen at random for the spotlight. It embodied Kanto's spirit. Cute, yet fierce. Approachable, yet powerful. When the media franchises kicked off, Pikachu led the charge. Anime episodes beaming across the globe, trading cards flying off shelves, merchandise turning bedrooms into shrines. Pikachu embedded Kanto's archetype into pop culture like nothing else. Remember the first Pokémon movie? That Thunderbolt showdown wasn't just entertainment, it was Kanto declaring its dominance on the world stage, and it's not just Pikachu. Take Charizard, that fiery dragon from the original trio's evolutions. It became the poster child for ambition, for pushing limits. In media, Charizard arcs influenced countless stories, the underdog rising, the bond between trainer and Pokémon tested by flame. You see echoes in later regions' dragons like Reshiram or Rayquaza, but they all trace back to Charizard's archetype. Or consider Mew, the elusive psychic from Kanto's hidden corners. Mew's playful, godlike whimsy inspired the whole concept of mythics in global lore. Movies, games, even fan theories, all laced with Kanto's originals. These species drove franchises that grossed billions, turning Pokémon into a cultural juggernaut. But why does that matter? Because it locked Kanto's essence into the collective imagination. When kids in Galar pick their first Wooloo, they're unknowingly engaging with a world flavoured by Pikachu's spark, by the original set's charm. Now, let's pull back and look at the bigger picture. This original set didn't just spread, it evolved the very idea of evolution in the Pokémon world. Here's a revelation that might blow your mind. Those unique regional variants you love, the Alolan Vulpix with its icy fur, or the Galarian Zigzagoon that's all sneaky and dark, they're not entirely new inventions. They're evolutionary divergences straight from Kanto stock. Picture this: Vulpix, a Kanto native, fire-type fox kit, its ancestors carried northward by migrating trainers or wild drifts. In Alola's volcanic yet humid climes, selective pressures kicked in. Over generations, the fire affinity flipped to ice, adapting to snowy peaks. It's the same genetic blueprint, tweaked by environment. Scientists in the Pokémon world call it regional dimorphism, but you and I know it's Kanto's legacy at work. Take another example, the Jotonian variant of Crobat, evolving from Zubat, that bat that's as Kanto as it gets. In the dim caves of Kanto, Zubat thrives on echolocation and poison bites, but migrate them to Johto's deeper, damper tunnels, and bam, faster wings, deadlier venom. It's not a different species, it's Kanto's archetype diverging to fit, and don't get me started on Galarian Ponyta, that ghostly horse born from Kanto's Rapidash line. The original Ponyta gallops across Kanto plains full of fire and speed. But in Galar's polluted urban sprawl, exposure to otherworldly energies twisted it into something ethereal. Trainers there report its soothing troubled souls, a far cry from the fiery charger, yet the core form, the mane, the hooves, screams Kanto origins. These divergences explain why every Pokédex feels connected. You catch a Corvic Knight in Galar, and its steel feathers might remind you of Kanto's fearsome birds, but dig deeper, and it's the migration of Spearow flocks that planted those seeds centuries ago. You might be wondering, how do we even know this? Well, it's pieced together from professor notes like Oak's own journals, and global research networks tracing DNA markers. Kanto's original set acts like a genetic timestamp. Every variant shares markers, subtle sequences in their code that point back to the first Pokédex. It's why, when you transfer a Kanto Pikachu to a distant region via the PC system, it can breed with locals and produce hybrids that carry that original spark. This isn't just science, it's storytelling. Imagine a world where your childhood favourites aren't relics but living ancestors, influencing the Pokémon your rivals catch halfway around the globe. It makes every battle feel interconnected, every evolution a nod to the source. But let's make this personal for a second. Remember your first Pikachu? That little jolt of excitement when it zapped a foe? That wasn't isolated joy, it tapped into a global phenomenon. Pikachu's archetype has driven more than media. It's shaped trainer culture. Conventions worldwide feature Pikachu cosplay. Tournaments honour its electric legacy. And through it all, Kanto's essence persists. Even in regions like Paldea, where Miraidon roars with futuristic flair, the merchandise aisles overflow with Pikachu plushies. It's embedded so deep that without Kanto's originals, the franchise might never have exploded. Think about the economic ripple, Silph Co's merch, anime dubs in every language, all fueled by those first icons. You, as a fan, are part of that legacy, carrying Kanto's archetypes in your heart and your team. Expanding on migrations, consider the role of human Pokémon bonds in this spread. Early trainers, inspired by Red's journeys, took their Kanto catches everywhere. A kid from Saffron hauls a Mr. Mime to Hoenn, and suddenly psychic types are normalizing in tropical gyms. These weren't invasions, they were integrations. Biodiversity boomed because Kanto's set was balanced. Grass for forests, rock for mountains, you name it. In Unova, with its urban sprawl, Kanto's urban adapters like Voltorb found new niches, evolving into electrode variants that power city grids. It's a testament to the original roster's foresight, almost like the world was designed with expansion in mind. Now, that revelation about divergences, let's unpack it more. Evolutionary biologists in the Pokémon League study this obsessively. They map family trees, and guess what? Over 70% of known variants link back to Kanto primaries. Take the Hisuian Growlithe. Kanto's loyal fire pup becomes a ghostly guardian in ancient Sinnoh. Why? Harsh winters favoured spectral adaptations, but the growl, the mane, pure Kanto, or Cantonian Farfetch'd, that leek-wielding duck, diverging into Galarian form with a shield and leek sword, it's the same stubborn survivor spirit reshaped by knightly folklore. These aren't random, they're proof of Kanto's enduring influence. You encounter a regional form, and it's like uncovering a family secret, a branch from the original tree. This all ties into how Kanto set the tone for discovery. Trainers today, exploring Kalos or Alola, feel that same thrill because the archetypes are familiar yet twisted. It keeps the wonder alive. Pikachu's media dominance ensures that, from viral memes to blockbuster films, it's the thread weaving Kanto into every culture. In Japan, it's a national mascot. In the West, it's synonymous with the brand. That embedding? It's why Pokémon feels universal, while Yorioto Zubat feels like kin to a Kanto one. As we wrap this up, you've seen how Kanto's original archetypes didn't just start the game, they defined its evolution, literally and figuratively. But what about the legends that elevated them to godhood? That's where we head next, into Chapter 14, Mythic Foundations, where the birds and Mew rewrite what we thought we knew about power itself. You won't want to miss how those ancient forces turned Kanto into the cradle of miracles. Mythic Foundations. In the heart of Kanto, where mist-shrouded mountains meet crashing seas, the first true legends of the Pokémon world took flight, not as mere stories, but as forces that demanded respect and sparked a global obsession. These weren't just powerful creatures, they were the architects of how we classify the extraordinary, turning whispers of myth into structured science. You see, long before Galar's dragons or Paldea's treasures, Kanto's researchers faced the unknown head-on, forging the rules that would echo through every region. Let's start with the trio that captured imaginations from the very beginning, the legendary birds. Articuno, the glacial guardian of the Seafoam Islands, with wings that could freeze oceans in an instant. Zapdos, the thunderbird of the power plant, crackling with electricity that lit up the night like a storm unleashed. And Moltres, the fiery phoenix of Victory Road, whose flames could rebirth the land from ashes. When trainers first crossed paths with these beings in the wilds of Kanto, it wasn't a casual encounter. No, these birds didn't just appear. They shattered the ordinary world, leaving trails of ice, lightning, and fire that forced everyone to rethink what Pokémon could be. Back in those early days, Kanto's research outposts, scattered along rugged coasts and hidden in forested enclaves, became ground zero for understanding them. Picture this. A team of scientists huddled in a windswept cabin on Route 20, binoculars trained on Articuno's distant silhouette as it glided over ice floes. They didn't rush in with nets or pokeballs, that would have been folly. Instead, they observed from afar, noting patterns in migration, energy signatures, and the subtle ways these birds influenced the environment. Why? Because these encounters revealed something profound. Not all Pokémon were meant for capture. The birds were rare, elusive, almost divine in their isolation. From those outposts, protocols emerged, careful, ethical guidelines for study that prioritized coexistence over conquest. You might wonder, how did they even begin to categorize something so untamed? It started simple. Researchers logged sightings in weathered journals, cross-referencing with local folklore from Vermilion fishermen or Cerulean elders. Articuno's appearances coincided with brutal winters, Zapdos with power surges that blacked out cities, Moltres with volcanic rumbles deep underground. These weren't random, they were symbiotic ties to Kanto's ecosystems. By the time the first Pokédex entries were compiled, the birds had earned a new status. Tier 1 legendaries, beings of singular power, one per element, too vital to the world to be confined. This wasn't just classification, it was a blueprint. Outposts like the one in the Viridian Forest outskirts developed non-invasive tech, drones for aerial tracking, seismic sensors for Moltres' wake, to gather data without disturbance. Trainers were trained to report, not pursue, turning every journey into a contribution to science. But the birds were only the beginning. Enter Mew, the phantom that turned everything upside down. If the birds were the visible storms, Mew was the invisible spark, a genetic whisper said to hold the DNA of all Pokémon. Sightings were rarer than a shiny Charizard, fleeting glimpses in the Amazon-like depths of Kanto's jungles or the ruins of ancient shrines. One story from the outpost tells of a young researcher in the fuchsia safari zone who swore she saw a pink blur dart through the underbrush, leaving behind a trail of blooming flowers in its wake. Was it real? The evidence mounted. Fur samples that baffled labs, psychic echoes picked up by sensitive instruments. Mew wasn't just rare, it was mythical, a Tier 0 enigma, the ancestor that birthed the entire Pokémon lineage. This discovery pushed Kanto's protocols to evolve. Outposts expanded into full research networks, linking with Silph Co for advanced scanners that could detect Mew's telekinetic ripples without direct contact. Study methods shifted from observation to prediction, modelling Mew's playful, childlike behaviours through simulated habitats, drawing on tales of it mimicking other Pokémon to understand adaptability. You can feel the excitement in those old logs. If Mew is the origin, then every Pokémon in your party carries its echo. Rarity tiers solidified here, with Mew at the pinnacle, influencing how we'd later chase legends like the Regis or the Lake Guardians. Kanto didn't just document, it humanized the mythic, teaching us that even the most elusive deserve wonder, not exploitation. These foundations weren't without controversy though. Trainers debated endlessly in Pallet Town taverns. Should you battle a legendary or let it be? The outposts answered with balance. Engage if it initiates, but always with reverence. This ethos spread, shaping how Johto's researchers approached Ho-Oh and Lugia, echoing Kanto's caution. But here's where it gets truly revolutionary. The legendary birds and Mew didn't just set tiers, they established a global study framework. Data from those Kanto outposts fed into the International Pokémon Association, creating standardized protocols, ethical observation windows, biodiversity impact assessments, even international alert systems for migrations. Imagine you're a scientist in Sinnoh, tracking Dialga. Your methods trace back to that first frozen vigil for Articuno. Now hold on to that thought, because everything changed with one creation that blurred the line between myth and monstrosity. Mewtwo. Born not from nature's whim, but from human ambition, in the shadowed labs beneath Cinnabar Island, Mewtwo emerged as a shadow over Kanto's legacy. You know the tale. Scientists, driven by curiosity and hubris, cloned Mew's DNA, amplifying it into a psychic powerhouse that shattered containment on its first breath. When Mewtwo fled into the night, levelling mountains in its rage, it wasn't just an escape, it was a reckoning. This emergence forced a total redefinition of legendary classes. Before Mewtwo, legendaries were natural phenomena, untouchable forces like the birds gliding on eternal winds. But Mewtwo, it was engineered, a mirror to our own flaws, intelligent, vengeful, questioning its very existence. Kanto's outposts scrambled, updating tiers on the fly. No longer just natural or mythical. Now there were subclasses for artificial legendaries, protocols for containment ethics, and debates on whether clones could claim the same reverence. Mewtwo's psychic storms disrupted migrations, forcing researchers to integrate it into models. How does a man-made god fit into the ecosystem? The answer reshaped everything. Rarity tiers expanded to include anomalous categories, acknowledging beings that defied origin stories. You won't believe how far this rippled. In Galar, when the Crown Tundra opened, cataloguers didn't just list Calyrex or the Regis, they applied Kanto's redefined classes, debating if Regieleki was a natural evolution or an engineered echo of Mewtwo's power. Protocols from Cinnabar's fallout guided their studies, psychic dampeners borrowed from Silph Co weapon, ethical reviews before any capture attempts. Paldea took it further. The Scarlet and Violet Paradox Pokémon, those ancient future hybrids, owe their classification to Mewtwo's shadow. Researchers there pored over Kanto archives, using the redefinition to sort out if Iron Valiant was a legendary anomaly or something more. Mewtwo didn't just break molds, it rebuilt them, turning global catalogues into dynamic, evolving documents. Every region's Pokédex now has footnotes tracing back to that stormy night, warning of the dangers and potentials of playing Creator. But let's dig deeper into what this meant for the world you explore in your games. Take Galar's Isle of Armor. When Kubfu evolves into Urshifu, the single-form paths echo Kanto's elemental birds, but with Mewtwo's twist, choices that question identity, much like the clone's own turmoil. Paldea's Area Zero, that fractured crater of secrets, catalogues its legendaries with Kanto's precision. Ogerpon as a mythical trickster akin to Mew, Terapagos as a redefining titan that warps reality, protocols ensuring no reckless cloning repeats Cinnabar's sins. These aren't coincidences, they're direct lineages. Kanto's outpost even shared tech, teleportation beacons to safely relocate disturbed legendaries, now standard in Paldea's labs. And yet, as you journey through these stories, a twist lingers in the ancient Kanto texts, those crumbling scrolls unearthed from the Pokémon Mansion ruins. They hint at undiscovered ties, whispers that Mew isn't just Kanto's secret, but a thread woven through creation myths worldwide. One passage, faded but fervent, speaks of a pink wanderer who seeded life in distant lands. Could it link to Sinnoh's creation trio, or Unova's twin heroes? Scholars in Celadon University pore over it, cross-referencing with Hoenn's lore, suggesting Mew's migrations predated borders. It's not proven, but it plants a seed of mystery. What if Kanto's myths are the root of them all? This redefinition didn't stop at science, it touched hearts. Trainers like you, setting out from Pallet, carry that legacy, respecting the bird's freedom, marvelling at Mew's elusiveness, and approaching power like Mewtwo's with caution. It shaped rivalries too. Remember Lance, the Dragon Master, who studied under Kanto's protocols before conquering the Elite Four? His respect for legendaries stemmed from those early tiers, influencing champions everywhere. As we peel back these layers, you start to see how Kanto's mythic foundations weren't isolated. They pulsed with connections waiting to be bridged. Up next in Chapter 15, Bridging Worlds, we'll uncover how these legendary ties forged unbreakable links between regions, revealing migrations and alliances that changed the Pokémon world forever. What secrets do those ancient texts truly hold, and how do they pull distant lands together? Stick around, you won't want to miss the revelations. Bridging Worlds. Did you know that the bustling trade routes between Kanto and Johto weren't just paths for merchants hauling goods, but the very veins that pumped life into the Pokémon world's interconnected economy? Right at the heart of how Kanto shaped everything lies this unbreakable bond with its neighbour Johto, a connection that turned two regions into a powerhouse of exchange and innovation. As we dive into Bridging Worlds, you'll see how this partnership didn't just link two lands, it became the blueprint for every alliance that followed, reshaping trade, culture, and even the way trainers across the globe handle their most sacred guardians. Let's start with the economics, because that's where the real magic began. Picture the dusty road snaking from Saffron City in Kanto straight into Goldenrod in Johto, loaded with crates of Auron berries from Kanto's lush roots and shimmering evolutionary stones pulled from Johto's rugged peaks. These weren't random swaps. They formed a deliberate network, the first true interregional trade system that set prices, standardized shipping via Pokémon like Rapidash for speed, and Machoke for heavy lifting, and even sparked the creation of joint markets where Kantonian vendors hawked their fresh tech TMs next to Jotun silk woven from Levani threads. You can almost hear the haggling in those early days, trainers bartering not just for profit, but to fuel their journeys with resources from both sides. This model, it rippled outward. When Hoenn later linked with Sinnoh, they copied the exact framework: secure routes patrolled by local rangers, tariffs that favoured Pokémon-friendly goods, and hubs that boosted local economies without overwhelming them. Kanto and Johto proved that collaboration could multiply wealth, turning isolated regions into a thriving web where a rare item from one corner could end up in a trainer's hands on the other side of the map. But it wasn't all about coins and cargo. The cultural ties wove an even deeper thread, one that made people from Pallet Town feel right at home in Ecruteak City. Take the Harvest Festival, a tradition born from those border towns where Kantonian farmers and Johtoan artisans would gather under autumn skies. You'd have Pikachu lighting up lanterns while Bellsprout dancers from Johto swayed to flutes carved from Kanto's ancient oaks. These weren't one-off events. They evolved into annual spectacles that celebrated shared myths, like tales of Ho-Oh and the legendary birds soaring together in forgotten legends. Families crossed borders freely, kids swapping stories of their first badges, and Pokémon from both regions mingling in friendly battles that taught tolerance and teamwork. What started as simple potlucks, Cantonian rice balls next to Johto and Mumu milk treats, grew into a cultural glue that influenced everything from fashion to folklore. Hoenn's Water Lily Festival, directly inspired by these, with Sinnoh adding their snowy twists. You see, by blending their worlds, Kanto and Johto showed how festivals could bridge divides, fostering a sense of unity that made the Pokémon world feel less like separate islands and more like one big, vibrant community. It's the kind of exchange that makes you wonder, without those shared nights of laughter and legend, would regions like Unova even have their Unity Day parades? Now, shift your gaze to something far more profound, the joint efforts on protecting legendaries that turned this duo into global trailblazers. In the shadow of Mount Silver, where the chill winds whisper secrets of ancient powers, Kanto and Johto faced a common foe, poachers eyeing Articuno's icy feathers or Suicune's pure waters. Rather than fight alone, they launched the first cross-border conservation pact, pooling resources from Kanto's elite researchers and Johto's shaman-like guardians. Teams of scientists from Celadon Labs worked alongside Akrutik elders, tracking migration patterns of Mew and the legendary beasts with cutting-edge devices borrowed from Silph Co. They established no-fly zones over sacred sites, enforced by joint ranger squads where a Cantonian Pidgeot might scout alongside a Johto and Noctowl. The results? Not just saved Pokémon, but a template for alliances that spanned continents. When Kalos dealt with Xerneas threats, they called on this model, forming pacts with other regions to share intel on legendary behaviours. Or think about Alola's Tapu Guardians. Their protection grids echo the very protocols Kanto Johto pioneered, using shared databases to predict and prevent disturbances. You feel the weight of it, don't you? These initiatives weren't about hoarding power, they were about recognising that legendaries don't respect borders, and neither should we. It sparked a wave of multi-region councils, where threats like invasive species or unethical experiments get tackled head-on, all because Kanto and Johto dared to link arms first. And here's where the story takes a tense turn, one that reveals just how fragile these bridges can be. Deep in the annals of Pokémon history, border disputes flared up like a sudden thunderbolt. Arguments over resource rights near the Kanto-Johto divide, fueled by rival mining interests eyeing rare ores that could power Pokeballs or attract wild Pokémon hordes. Tensions boiled over into standoffs, with trade halting and festivals cancelled, rangers on high alert as smugglers slipped through the cracks. It nearly tore everything apart, you know. Cantonian officials clashed with Johtoan leaders in heated summits, accusations flying about encroaching on sacred lands where legendaries roamed. The world watched, holding its breath, because if this vital link snapped, the economic flow would grind to a halt, cultural exchanges fade into memory, and those conservation efforts, they'd crumble without shared vigilance. Imagine the chaos. Prices skyrocketing for everyday items, young trainers stuck without access to diverse Pokémon, and poachers thriving in the discord. But in a twist that still echoes today, cooler heads prevailed through back-channel diplomacy, brokered by none other than legendary figures like Professor Oak, who reminded everyone of the bigger picture. They redrew maps with mutual respect, fortifying the bond instead of breaking it. That near miss? It altered global dynamics forever, teaching every region that alliances aren't optional, they're survival. Without it, the Pokémon world might have fractured into isolated strongholds, but instead it unified, with Kanto Johto's resilience inspiring pacts from Gala to Paldea. Diving deeper into those trade routes, let's talk specifics that bring this to life. The Golden Path, as it's called, wasn't just a dirt trail, it was engineered with way stations stocked by both regions, where weary travellers could heal their Pokémon at communal centres. Cantonian exports like the latest Silph scopes flooded Johto markets, helping trainers spot ghost types in the bell tower, while Johto's precision-engineered Apricorn Pokeballs revolutionised Kanto's capture tech, making balls lighter and more eco-friendly. Economists later calculated that this exchange boosted GDP by percentages that rival modern Unova trade booms, all because they prioritised Pokémon welfare in deals. No exploitative labour, just symbiotic partnerships. You can picture a young merchant from Vermilion, backpack slung over one shoulder, negotiating with a Johtoan counterpart over a shipment of Thunderstones, their Growlithe and Sentry playfully tussling nearby. It's these human Pokémon interactions that made the routes hum, turning commerce into community. On the cultural front, the shared festivals went beyond mere celebration. They were incubators for innovation. During the Moonview Gathering held at the border's edge, artists from both sides collaborated on murals depicting intertwined legends, like Lugia diving alongside Zapdos in a storm of unity. These events drew crowds from afar, even early visitors from distant Hoenn who took home ideas for their own dive festivals. Music fused too, Cantonian rock anthems from Celadon bands mixed with Johto and shamisen strums, creating hits that topped charts worldwide. And food? Oh, the fusions. Try Cantonian curry spiced with Johto and pinap berries, a dish so popular it spawned food trucks in every major city. These weren't accidents. They were deliberate efforts to blur lines, making cultures feel interchangeable. What if I told you this exchange even influenced breeding practices? Trainers swapped tips on raising Cantonian starters with Johtoan evolutions, leading to hybrid training methods that spread globally, like combining Charmander's fire with Cyndaquil's speed for unbeatable battlers. Now, those legendary conservation initiatives deserve more spotlight because they hit at the soul of the Pokémon world. The pact started small, a hotline between Lavender Town's Pokémon Tower Guardians and the Burn Tower Keepers in Johto, alerting each other to unusual energy spikes from Mewtwo's distant echoes or Entei's fiery trails. But it scaled fast. They deployed the first inter-regional monitoring network, satellites, advanced Poké-drones, tracking legendary migrations across the divide. Joint task forces raided poacher camps with Cantonian Machamp hauling away contraband alongside Johto and Hitmontop enforcers. The payoff was massive. Population stabilized and knowledge shared led to breakthroughs like non-invasive study methods that respected legendary autonomy. This influenced everything from Sinnoh's creation trio protections to Gala's Dynamax safeguards, where alliances now preempt threats before they escalate. You sense the urgency, right? In a world where one rogue experiment could unleash chaos, these bonds ensure no region stands alone. That border dispute revelation adds layers of drama you can't ignore. It kicked off in the late 90s post-Mewtwo incident, when mining booms tempted both sides to claim veins rich in evolutionary minerals. Protests erupted, trainers chaining themselves to roots, Pokémon like Onix burrowing protest barriers. The media frenzy painted doomsday scenarios, severed supply lines starving PC systems of data chips, festivals turning into flashpoints. Global leaders fretted. If Kanto Johto fell, the domino effect could isolate regions, stalling league expansions. But the turnaround? A historic accord signed under the stars at Indigo Plateau, with legendaries seemingly approving via auroras. It redefined borders as shared stewardship zones, boosting cooperation tenfold. Today, that near catastrophe is studied in trainer academies as the bridge crisis, a lesson in diplomacy that prevents similar rifts elsewhere. Expanding on the economic model, consider how it evolved tech sharing. Silph Co prototypes tested on Johto routes led to global standards for teleportation hubs, letting trainers zip from Saffron to Goldenrod in seconds. Trade guilds formed, regulating everything from berry farming quotas to TM distribution, ensuring fair play. Johto's influence brought sustainable practices, like using grass types for eco-friendly transport, which Kanto adopted, cutting emissions and inspiring Kalos's green initiatives. Culturally, the festivals birthed lasting icons. The Unity Torch, lit jointly each year, symbolizes enduring ties, carried by relay runners with Torchic and Quilava. Stories from these events fed into media, anime episodes featuring crossovers that popularized the regions worldwide. Even migration shifted. Cantonian Pidgey flocks now winter in Johto, diversifying biodiversity. For conservation, the alliances grew into the International Legendary Watch, headquartered in a neutral border facility. They host summits where experts debate ethics, drawing from Mewtwo's legacy to ban cloning outright. Success stories abound, thwarting a Xerneas poach ring through shared intel, or relocating a distressed Rayquaza with multi-region aid. The dispute's shadow lingers as a cautionary tale, but its resolution fortified the world. It prompted universal treaties like the Global Accord, mandating joint responses to crises. Without that scare, we might lack the robust networks that keep the peace today. As we wrap up this exploration of bridging worlds, you can't help but feel the pull of what comes next. In Chapter 16, Enduring Legacy, we'll uncover how Kanto's influence doesn't fade. It evolves, embedding itself in ways that promise to redefine the Pokémon future forever. Stick around. You won't want to miss how it all culminates. Enduring legacy. Kanto didn't just launch the Pokémon world, it forged the unbreakable chains that bind every corner of it together. From the bustling streets of Lumiose City in Kalos to the misty peaks of Gala's wild areas, the echoes of that original region pulse through every battle, every capture, every unbreakable bond between trainer and Pokémon. But as we stand at the threshold of this enduring legacy, one question lingers. In a universe that's grown vast and ever-shifting, does Kanto's foundational blueprint still guide us? Or is it time to redraw the map? Think about it. When you first boot up a Pokémon game or step into that virtual world, you're always starting small. A quiet town, a professor's lab, a choice of 3 starters that feel like destiny calling. That's no accident. Kanto set the template, and every region since has built its house on that same sturdy ground. Take the Pokémon League, for instance. What began as a rigorous circuit of 8 gyms in Kanto, culminating in the Indigo Plateau's championship clash, became the gold standard. Johto mirrored it almost exactly, with its own badges and Elite Four showdown. Hoenn spiced it up with contests, but the core structure, straight from Kanto's playbook. Even Sinnoh, with its rugged terrains and ancient lore, funnels trainers through gyms toward a league finale that honours the original format. And don't get me started on Unova or Alola. Their twists on the system still nod back to Kanto's innovation, creating a global rhythm where victory tastes the same no matter where you chase it. You see, this unification isn't just about battles, it's woven into the very fabric of how we interact with Pokémon everywhere. The Pokédex, that indispensable tool clutched in every trainer's hand, originated right there in Kanto's labs. Professor Oak's vision of cataloguing every species didn't stop at the borders. It exploded outward, evolving into regional variants but always rooted in that first comprehensive scan. Imagine the ripple effect. Without Kanto's early efforts, Johto's Pokédex wouldn't have integrated seamless data sharing, or Paldea's wouldn't boast holographic displays. It's a unified knowledge base, a digital heartbeat connecting Saffron City's high-rises to the sandy dunes of Hisui. But let's dive deeper into the tech that made it all possible. Pokeballs weren't always the sleek, mass-produced spheres we toss without a second thought. Kanto pioneered their widespread availability, turning what was once a rare artisan craft into an industry standard. Factories in Celadon City churned out millions, exporting designs that standardized capture mechanics across the globe. You capture a Pikachu in Kanto the same way you'd snag a Wooloo in Gala. Quick, ethical, revolutionary. And then there's the PC storage system, the brainchild of Bill, that unassuming coder from Cinnabar. What started as a local solution to manage Pokémon populations ballooned into a global data network. Today, when you deposit your team in a centre halfway across the world, you're tapping into Kanto's legacy. Secure, instantaneous transfers that prevent overcrowding and enable the nomadic trainer life we all crave. Without that, regions like Oro or Ferrum would still be isolated pockets, cut off from the flow of adventure. Corporate powerhouses amplified this reach even further. Silph Co, with its gleaming headquarters in Saffron, didn't hoard its breakthroughs. The Silph scope piercing the veil on ghostly illusions set the stage for tools like the dowsing machine in Sinnoh or the Rotom phone in Gala. Technical machines? Born in Kanto's labs, they standardized move teaching, letting a Charmander learn Surf anywhere from Viridian Forest to the depths of ultraspace. Teleportation tech, once a luxury for executives, paved the way for fly mechanics and even the dimensional warps in later games. Every region builds on this baseline. Devon Corp in Hoenn iterates on Silph's designs, while Ether Paradise in Alola refines them for conservation. Kanto's innovations didn't just spread, they unified, creating a technological ecosystem where no trainer is left behind, no matter their starting point. Now shift your gaze to the shadows, because Kanto's influence casts long ones there too. Team Rocket wasn't the first criminal outfit, but it became the blueprint for every shadowy syndicate that followed. Giovanni's empire, with its rigid hierarchy, ideological drive for dominance, and operational flair, think mechs, disguises, and grand heists, mirrored in Team Aqua and Magma's elemental obsessions, or Team Galactic's cosmic ambitions. Even the more nuanced groups like Team Plasma in Unova echo Rocket's structure, questioning human Pokémon bonds while plotting control. You can't talk about villainy in the Pokémon world without circling back to Kanto. It defined the stakes, the moral grey areas, and the epic takedowns that make redemption arcs so satisfying. Why does every antagonist feel like a twisted reflection of that original threat? Because Kanto taught us that true danger comes from within the system it helped build. And speaking of boundaries pushed to the brink, nothing embodies Kanto's daring quite like the Mewtwo project. That clandestine experiment on Cinnabar Island didn't just create a legend, it ignited a worldwide debate on genetic engineering, cloning, legendary manipulation. The ethical lines drawn in those stormy labs reappear in every region. Lysandre's ultimate weapon in Kalos, a direct descendant of Mewtwo's shadow. Lucamine's Ultra Beast obsessions in Alola, they wrestle with the same hubris. Kanto established the scientific precedents, forcing global discourse on what it means to play God with Pokémon. You feel that tension in every story, the thrill of discovery clashing with the fear of overreach. It's why Mewtwo's tale resonates from Pallet Town to the ends of the earth, a cautionary blueprint etched into the world's DNA. Culturally, Kanto reigns supreme as the mythic cradle. Red, blue, and green aren't just protagonists, they're archetypes. Heroes whose journeys are retold in statues across Johto, cameos in Hoenn's media, and even folklore in distant lands. Step into any Pokémon Center worldwide, and you'll hear whispers of that silent champion scaling Metsilva, or the rival who never quits. Kanto's original roster, the Bulbasaurs, Squirtles, Pidgeys, forms the classic set, influencing migrations, breeding programs, and biodiversity everywhere. Why do Eevee evolutions pop up in every region? Because Kanto normalized their versatility, turning them into global icons. Media spins tales around these roots. Anime episodes homage Viridian gym battles, manga arcs revisit Indigo League drama. It's a cultural canon that unites fans, making you feel like part of an ancient order every time you shout, "I choose you!" Even the enigmatic world of legendaries bows to Kanto's framework. The legendary birds, Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres, along with Mew and the birth of Mewtwo, shaped how we classify the mythic. Rarity tiers, study methods, all pioneered in Kanto's wilds and labs. Lugia in Johto or Rayquaza in Hoenn get catalogued through that lens, their lore building on the idea of guardians tied to elements and creation. Mew's elusive nature set the bar for hidden legends like Celebi or Jirachi, while Mewtwo's artificial origins opened doors to man-made myths like Genesect. You hunt these beings with tools and respect born in Kanto, ensuring that every region's pantheon feels connected, part of a larger cosmic tapestry. This global connectivity, it all traces back to Kanto's bridge with Johto. That economic and cultural linkage, shared roots, intertwined histories, mutual festivals, became the model for inter-region harmony. Think of the Kalos-Johto trade routes or Gala's international tournaments. They're evolutions of Kanto's blueprint, fostering alliances that prevent isolation. In a world where Pokémon roam freely across borders, Kanto's innovations ensure the flow, shared standards for training, conservation pacts inspired by Viridian forest preserves, even diplomatic summits echoing the Pokémon Association's early councils. It's a unified Pokémon world where every region owes its foundation to the original, standing tall because Kanto laid the stones. But here's where it gets really intriguing. As we've traced these threads, from tech to triumphs, one truth emerges. Kanto's legacy isn't frozen in time, it's alive, adapting but always anchoring. Yet as new regions rise and evolutions unfold, think Dynamax in Gala or Terrastal in Paldea, reflections creep in. Do these bold changes honour Kanto's blueprint, or are they quietly eroding it? The League format persists, but with mega evolutions and Z-moves, battles feel faster, flashier. Tech advances, yet ethical debates from Mewtwo echo louder amid cloning scandals in newer labs. Cultural icons endure, but regional starters steal the spotlight, challenging the original set's dominance. You have to wonder, in this changing landscape, does Kanto's vision still hold firm, guiding us forward, or is it a relic we outgrow? The evolutions keep coming, each one a test of that foundational strength, pulling the world toward unity while stretching its seams. What if the answer lies beyond what we know? Emerging evidence, whispers from explorers, anomalous data in global networks, hints that Kanto's influence stretches to undiscovered regions, places unmarked on any map. Ancient texts from Mount Moon suggest ties to far-flung lands where Kanto-style gyms might already thrive in secret. Pokémon migrations point to hidden continents echoing the original's biodiversity. Could there be a new frontier, built unknowingly on Kanto's enduring blueprint? It's a twist that reframes everything, not just the foundation of the known world, but the seed for worlds yet to come. As we wrap this journey through Kanto's indelible mark, you realize it's more than history. It's the pulse of every adventure you'll ever take. The blueprint holds, challenged but unbroken, promising that no matter how the world evolves, those first steps from Pallet Town will always light the way. And in that realization, the true legacy endures, inviting you to carry it forward into whatever comes next. If this story resonated with you, there's plenty more. Click the video on screen to keep the journey going, or dive into the full Pokémon playlist for more stories, memories, and deep dives. Whichever path you choose, I'll see you there, trainer.